That all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage, David Harris Jr.
Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me, staff? What's up, Florida? How's everybody doing this amazing Monday morning? Whose birthday is it today? Who's got a birthday? Anybody? Who's got a birthday? Somebody? Who's got a birthday today? Come up here. Come up here. My book, Why I Couldn't Stay Silent, is for you. You get this at davidharrisjr.com, but happy birthday. Hope you enjoy this. I'll toss it for you. God bless you. Happy birthday. All right, before I get started, y'all an amazing crowd. Amazing. Hyped up. On the right side of history mindset, right? And so I got to do something for social. How many of y'all want to say Trump 2020 with me? You show the president of the United States. He retweets me. He may see it. Let's get it going. Trump 2020. Trump 2020. Trump 2020. Trump 2020. Hold on. We got to do it together now. Here's the cadence. Trump 2020. 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 And Trump 2020 all the way to Trump 2024, baby. That's what we need. That's what we want. That's what we hope for. And personally, friends, that's what I believe is going to take place. I do. Some people say, how can you believe that? Aren't you listening to the mainstream media? Do you listen to the mainstream media? They call it programming for a reason. Right? Thank you. They call it programming for a reason. What about these senators that think they're in charge? What about Mitch McConnell that's saying, oh, we got to accept the results? I don't know about you, but I'm not accepting anything. I am not accepting the results of this sham election and being forced to bow down to a socialist regime, which would be the Biden-Harris regime. Am I alone? Are you with me? We must not accept these fake results. Absolutely can't do it. One of the greatest things that gives me hope and peace during this time, can I be real with you? It's my faith in God. Anybody out there have faith in God? He's a good papa, isn't he? How many of y'all out there call him papa? It was new to me at once. At one point, it was very new to me. And then I had an encounter with God that changed my perspective, and it was no longer a distant father figure. It was like Jesus said on the cross, Abba. You know what Abba is? It's a close, intimate form of the word father, like we would say daddy. So if Jesus called him daddy, it's good for us too, right? I believe that right now we are at a precipice like never before in our country. And it's individuals like you that are going to shape what takes place. And it's not just going to be you standing up and speaking out, but let me keep it really, really real with you. I believe it's going to be those of you in this room or listening or watching. It's going to be those of you that turn up your faith engagement with God. That say, you know what, I hear God calling me, and I'm going to pray with you in a little bit that God will heighten your senses to hear his voice like he has mine and even beyond what he has for me. But I truly believe that it's those of us, not to leave you out, but if you don't have a relationship with Papa, you are left out, right? You're missing out, rather. You're missing out because it's such an amazing journey of faith that we have with him. I truly believe it's going to be those like Charlie Kirk. He's got an amazing relationship. He knows the Bible. And he puts on amazing events. But guess what? Where's the next Charlie Kirk? Yeah, you guys are out there. Candace Owens. Brandon Tatum. Graham Allen. Terrence Williams. Where's my little brother Terrence at? But it's those of us, I truly believe it's going to be those of us that have a connection spiritually with our Heavenly Father, that are going to be able to hear his voice and act on what he says to do or where he says to go, and will be in the specific moment, in the place where we need to be to meet whoever we're supposed to meet, to talk to whoever we're supposed to talk to allow heaven to be that catalyst on earth, so that on earth as it is in heaven. You follow me? I've been privileged and honored to be a part of something called the Falkirk Center. How many of y'all heard of that? If you haven't already followed Falkirk_Center, follow the Falkirk Center. Charlie Kirk was co-founder of that. It is a group of individuals that have faith in God but understand that we weren't called to be in the four walls of the church. How many understand if you're a believer, if you accept who Yeshua was and is for us, just a ransom for us to have access to heaven and access to the Father. If you accept that, then you are part of the church. Well, guess what? Wherever we go, church is. Right? It's not we go to the four walls of the church on a Sunday and that's the church. No. I used to think that. I started my first company when I was 20 years old. We got any 20-year-olds in here? Around 20? 20 years old, I started my first company. I was doing what I felt God had called me to do. I had had a radical encounter with God. I went from having a pager on my hip that would beep 50 to 100 times a day, from everybody wanting weed, crank, cocaine, mushrooms, acid, you name it. I was the neighborhood dealer. I was the town dealer in Northern California. I went from that to having a radical encounter with God. In the middle of my sin-drenched life, he revealed his love to me, and it shattered everything. I no longer had fear of man. I was so enamored with this love that God showed me. So I went from that, and then God led me on a journey to start a company at 20. And by 22 years old, my company was doing $2 million a year in sales. I don't know about you, but to be 22, 23 and have $150,000 to $200,000 a month going through your bank account every month, employing close to 50 people, it's a lot. I thought I could handle it. But I took my eyes off of Jesus, and guess what I did? I started to sink. I thought I was the man. I thought I was the one that had put all these things in place for myself. And guess what happens when you take your eyes off of Jesus? It's easy to sink. Am I the only one that's ever sunk? Anybody in here sunk before? Taking their eyes off of Jesus? We are human, right? But my life is a testimony, friends. My life is a testimony of how good God is and his grace for us. And that no matter what happens and how many times you fall, if you just get back up and say, God, not my will, but your will, he will order your steps. He will open up that plan for you. And so from going through what I went through and marrying my high school sweetheart, how many of you in here want long-lasting love, relationship? When we get done with the politics, hopefully it's not somebody that completely disagrees with our politics, right? But you want long-lasting relationship. You want a marriage. You want love. Well, I am proud to say, and I don't know where she's at, otherwise I'd embarrass the heck out of her. I've been married to my bride for 26 years. We've got two beautiful daughters that are 22 and 24 years old. And again, if I can be honest with you, God has been the glue for us. When I realize how much he loves me and how much he loves her, it helps me overcome my own issues and it helps her overcome my issues. So we are at a time right now like never before that I truly believe, and I know it's Monday morning and you guys were just all getting hyped to Drake and everything else, but I really felt, I've been praying the whole time before going into this, Father, what is it that you want this amazing crowd of young people to take away from what I share and what I speak today? And I really feel that there's a lot among you that are going to take onto this, that are going to take a hold of this and say, I want to ratchet it up to a new level. I want to take it to a new level. And there was a season where I was praying the Lord's Prayer. You all know the Lord's Prayer? Our Father who art in heaven. I was praying that every single morning. I would pray it. I would get in my secret place. How many of you guys have a secret place? Just a place you just get with just you and God and turn on worship music. It could be a closet. It could be, when you're getting ready. It could be in the shower. Whatever it is, it's just you and God. You turn on worship and you pray. I was doing that and I was praying the Lord's Prayer and I was doing it I was just praying it from memory. I was just praying it almost robotically, if you will. I was just praying it, right? Because I knew it. And Holy Spirit stopped me and said, wait a minute. Listen to what Jesus was praying. He said, our Father. Our Father. If he's our Father, that means we're all brothers and sisters. There's no color in that. There's no class division in that. Our Father means we're all part of the same family. Our Father who art in heaven, where's he at? He's not confined to this earthly realm. Our Father is the creator of the universe, the one the Bible says he flung his fingers and the stars stuck in the sky. The one that David fell asleep counting the stars. He said, if I count your thoughts towards me, O God, they're more in number than the stars in the sky. And then he says, and when I wake up, which means he fell asleep counting the stars. When I wake up, there you are still thinking of me. Our Father who is in heaven, holy. He's holy. He's set apart. He doesn't succumb to everything that's in this realm, this earthly realm that we're in, that's negative or dark. Holy is his name. And then I heard my pastor say that while we read, your kingdom come, it's actually more of a demand, a pulling, kingdom of God come. How many of you want to see the kingdom of God come on earth? How many of you want to see the kingdom of God come to earth? The kingdom is righteousness, is joy, is peace. How many of you think that we need righteousness right now in our country? We need righteousness right now at this election. We need righteousness in this season. How many of you think we need joy? We need joy in this season. And peace, righteousness, joy, and peace. That is the kingdom. How many of you out there feel like you need some more peace in your heart? Because there's a heck of a lot going on all around us, right? Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. How many of you understand that there are men and women whose will for your life and for our country is not what we want? It's not freedom. It's socialism. It's communism. It's total control. So literally, Jesus said, pray, your kingdom come. Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. How many of you understand what God wants in heaven is done like that, right? There's no resistance. There's no restraints. When God just thinks he wants something in heaven, the mere thought makes it appear. There's no resistance. How many of you would love to see God's will invade heaven, especially right now, like never before? Honestly, how many of you like to see that? Can I tell you all that you that raised your hand, you that feel that tug in your heart, it is you that God is calling to be the catalyst for this season, so that you don't just leave SAS with more information. You're hyped up. You love the speakers you saw. Got to see some amazing speakers here. But you leave with a greater awareness of who you are and whose you are. And you wake up every morning not thinking about the influencers that you saw or this person that you saw, but you wake up in the morning thinking about the creator of the universe is my daddy. And he's given me an assignment. There's a reason that you are alive right now. And I hope and pray that when you wake up every single morning, you wake up with that revelation that there's a reason that you were born in this era, that you're alive right now in this time in history, and that God wants to use you to shape the course of this nation. How many of you want that? How many of you want a greater revelation of who you are and why you were created? How many of you want to be active in why and how God handcrafted you to be a part of this world right now? How many of you want to be activated in that? Because when we're active in that, friends, we'll be the Charlie Kirks. We'll be the Candace Owens. We'll be the Graham Allen. We'll be the Tucker Carlson. We'll be these individuals that have tapped into their life giftings and callings. You'll be there. So pray this with me. We're going to pray the first part of the Lord's Prayer. We'll end it with his will be done. So pray this. And as you pray, I'm just going to ask right now, Father, I know it's early in the morning on Monday, but Father, I thank you that you are here with all of us right now. That you know every single person that's here, that was going to be here, that's listening or even listening from the recording. That you know, and you have something special for them this morning that will change the course of their future forever. So I release that right now for every single heart in here. Make us hungry. Make us thirsty to know your plan, your will for our life. In Jesus' name. Repeat after me. Our Father, who is in heaven, holy is your name. Kingdom of God come. Will of God be done. On earth, in this earth, as your will is done in heaven. In Jesus' name. Now, if you prayed that and you believed it, maybe you felt something, I'm just going to believe and pray that God is going to begin to turn the heat up in his message to you, and his voices to you, and his thoughts to you. How many understand it's not always an audible? It's normally not an audible thing. But we can actually hear the voice of God speak to us. You guys understand that? And understand that he wants to speak to you even more than we want to hear. So while we are wrapping up SAS, we've got another 2 days? You are all here to get filled up, to get fed, to get inspired. You are here to say enough is enough, not on my watch. And hopefully you all come out of this with a greater anticipation for what God's going to do, not just in this country, but what God's going to do in your own lives. Because that's where the rubber meets the road, friends. The Falkirk Center, I love being a part of that. Jenna Ellis, how many of you have seen Jenna Ellis rocking with Rudy Giuliani? She got pulled into the Falkirk Center as a champion last summer, and to see what God has done in her life using her to represent the president has been absolutely amazing. But friends, don't leave here today just thankful for what you saw and what you heard, but leave here today with an anticipation and a desire to say, yes, God, whatever you have for me, I want it. And then go after it. You're gifted, you're beautifully and wonderfully made, and you were born for such a time as this. Amen? Amen? God bless you all. Have an amazing rest of your day. We will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Hey everybody, I hope you're enjoying this amazing conference. Look around. Not easy to pull off a conference like this. In fact, it's made possible by you. And if you're enjoying the programming, whether you're here in Palm Beach or online, and you're saying to yourself, I want to help, the place to help is tpusa.com/donate. Tax deductible battle fund to save the country. Made possible thanks to all of you amazing patriots out there. And now, the next speaker.
From 0 to 2 billion, 300,000 kids at camp, competitions all over the world, million uniform pieces a year, and doing something you love, only in America.
Jeff Webb is kind of the personification of the American dream. I'm joined now by Jeff Webb, who is the founder and creator of Varsity Spirit.
We developed the concept of a cheerleading competition not as a profit center, but as a platform for young people to show their athleticism and what they could do. It's that experience that really drives us to create this amazing experience for kids that kind of something they can remember the rest of their lives and that they can take with them and really build on that as they build their lives.
Like a 3-day experience. These kids come in, they warm up, many stay right here in one of the hotels at Disney. And the idea here is not only do they have the benefits of the competition, but also they can have a great time.
We created the sport and we helped create the market. We didn't get any money from the government, no grants or anything like that. We did it ourselves. It's been a labor of love, there's no doubt. We consider ourselves really the stewards of the sport. There was nobody else that could really have the kind of impact and influence and set rules like we could, because we were having all the only competitions. We were running most of the training in the camps. We started with 4,000 people and 24 instructors. Early on, we developed the first safety guidelines and safety rules for cheerleading, and that was frankly, we were developing cheerleading as you see it today as we went along. Our culture became one of, because we were young and because we were the small company in the industry and we had to fight and claw and we had something to prove and we were all about the same age and we were good friends, it created this kind of egalitarian feeling where everybody was one for all and all for one, and we refused to lose. We got to a point where we were creating this whole new sport with all these incredible stunts and acrobatics, and people were going crazy for it, and there was no uniforms that really would work for that. We actually had to get into the uniform business. We needed to have that type of apparel to be able to do what we do and have our students do that. So we created a uniform line, which eventually became the biggest profit generator for the company. So once we had the camps going, the competitions going, and the uniforms, our concept was to have the #1 position in each one of those, and then to cross-market between them. It created a very powerful franchise. It propelled double-digit growth for over 20 years and built, I think, what's a pretty amazing company. So when cable really began to get launched, I had a friend we were working with in production of our shows that left to go to work for this upstart cable company in Bristol, Connecticut, called ESPN. ESPN was only in 4 million homes when we joined them. So as ESPN's footprint grew, our exposure grew, and we kind of grew up with ESPN. And we're now the longest standing broadcast partner that ESPN has. Not the NFL, not college football. They weren't even there when we started. And it was us and billiards and alligator wrestling or something like that. Starting from, $85,000 in capital and running the business out of my apartment and building it to a point where it's no secret that, revenues in excess of $2 billion, 8,000 employees, increases in sales and profits 44 out of 45 years. We have over 300,000 people at our summer camps. We do over 1 million uniform pieces, custom pieces for high schools and colleges all over the country. We do over 400 competitions right across the country. Then, with our finals there in Orlando, we're pretty proud of that business performance. But it's still not the most important thing, and it's still not what drives us. And what drives us is doing something great and building a great organization and really making a contribution to young people in this country. Young people today are not lazy, as some people like to say. Millennials, they're not lazy. I work with thousands of them every year. They're not lazy. They need some help in finding their way, and they need some help with our institutions in making them more available to everybody. My own father gave his 3 children a great gift, and that's an appreciation and respect for the outdoors. And for me, that's really my recreation. I've been fortunate enough with the success of the company to be able to acquire land. We're here at Mallard Point Lodge in Brinkley, Arkansas, 700 acres of incredible duck and goose hunting, and just a great environment to have a lot of fun and entertain friends and family. So during the wintertime, some of the greatest duck and goose hunting in the country, only in America. When you get to the national championship competitions in particular, there's only going to be one winner. And they all want to be the winner. That's who they are. We all want to win when we compete. I want to put them in a position where they appreciate where they are and what a tribute they are by being there. Whether you win or lose, that is the time to set a good example of what character is all about. And then I send them back to their teams to talk about that before we make the awards. Cheerleading teams are interesting because they're leaders in the school, and they're responsible for creating or generating or complementing what we call school spirit. We teach them that their job is to recognize everybody, not just the athletes. People in choir, people in the band, people who excel academically. Trying to create a place
for everybody. That's what school spirit is. It's this kind of emotional connective tissue, if you will. But when you blow that up, then it also becomes community spirit. And a lot of these kids are involved in their communities. And then beyond that, think about it. It really is what we need in America. It's a place for everybody to feel like they can do something, they can contribute, and be appreciated. Only in America can you take a 24-year-old kid with an idea and a dream, be able to, scrabble together a little bit of money, attract young people that really want to make a difference and do something great, build a great organization and a great company over 40 years. The result you can kind of see here. To be able to take a small concept, expand it globally, so that millions of young people around the world can participate and enjoy it, that only starts in America. For me and my entire organization, it's always been about inspiring these young people to be the very best for their schools and their communities. They are the future leaders of America.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage, Jeff Webb.
Thank you very much. It is great to be here with you. I was able to finally get into town this morning. I've been watching some of the conference through live stream. It's just been unbelievable, the speakers and the message and at this really important time. I'm going to have a little change of pace for you, obviously. First of all, thanks to Charlie Kirk and the TP USA team for producing that great documentary and video. It's very humbling, and I appreciate it very much. Thank you. When Charlie and I first got to know each other, and he asked me to speak at a conference, the first conference I spoke at a couple of years ago, I said to him, "Hey, Charlie, look, why me? What do they want to hear from me? I mean, I'm not a politician, I'm not somebody on Fox News or something like that." And he said, "Jeff, I know your story. You started this great company that you built, really from nothing." He said, 40%, when we do the polling, 40% of this generation, your generation, say they want to start and run and build their own company. 40%, which just totally blew me away. So let me just ask you, how many of you have thought about that? And you're thinking you might want to do that someday? Yeah, okay, all right, great. So the video you saw shows kind of what the company is now. It talks a little bit about how we built it, but it talks about what it is now. And its reach and what it's doing. What I want to do, since some of you are thinking you might want to start your own business or your own nonprofit or your own organization, whatever, what I want to do is talk about the hard part, talk about the early days, what it takes to get there, to build kind of a world-class enterprise. And all of this, of course, just my opinion. When I started the company, first of all, I have very much a middle-class background. I grew up in Dallas, Texas. I grew up in a small house. I went to public school. Both of my parents worked real hard to make ends meet. And I was fortunate enough to take some of that experience and then turn it into the effort that became Varsity Spirit. But I started like that. And when I was 24 years old, I'd just been out of college a little bit and been a cheerleader at Oklahoma and Boomer Sooner. And so what am I going to do with my life? Do I want to, go to work for a big company? And in the back of my mind, this voice kept saying, you have this idea of changing things and adding athleticism and entertainment to this student leadership position. go for it. Make it happen. Do it. If you don't, you'll look back and always wish that you had tried. So, stupid enough as I was at that point, and with no money, I raised a little bit of money from family and friends, and went to some of my good friends who were former or current college cheerleaders and told them what I wanted to do and start this new company. And then I couldn't guarantee that we'd make it or I'd be able to pay them very much. And, they all said, let's go try it. We set up our first world headquarters. That was the second bedroom of my apartment in Memphis, Tennessee. And started to run these promotional free clinics where we would teach high school teams in these localities how to do the new stunts and all the new things that we would develop so it could really transform their team and their look and what they would do in their school. So we're doing all these free clinics. We finally get to the point, and the idea was to get those teams to come back to our summer camps where they'd actually pay money and we'd have a business. We got to the point where we'd done all these free clinics and we had run completely out of money. Done. All the way through the small amount of money I'd raised. We had no camp registrations. So believe me, at 24 years old, for the first time in my life, I am staring failure straight in the face, right? I'm going to have to go tell all my friends, thanks for the effort, but it didn't work, right? It was a bad feeling. The next day when I was going to actually break the news, we started getting in camp registrations. And people started registering and sending money, and we were barely able to make it. So varsity didn't start out like it is now. It started out there, and with me looking over the cliff, hoping we'd make it. Another kind of tough thing, because I think as you start an organization, if you're going to want to run a company and build it, you're going to have all these challenges, and especially at the front end. You saw our uniform business, and we talked about why we did that. So let me tell you this. So 4 years after we finally able to get everything going, we decided we're going to get in the uniform business. Our customers wanted it. I went out, we did designs, we put out a catalog. There was no internet then. And I got a partner, a strategic partner, a uniform manufacturing company. They did basketball and baseball. They were in Chattanooga, Tennessee. We got our orders. We invested all our money that we'd saved up. We got the orders. We sent them to the manufacturer. They're supposed to go out to our customers in 4 weeks. 4 weeks comes and goes. 8 weeks comes and goes. Finally, he calls me up and said, we're bankrupt. We can't get the uniforms out. So I'm staring at failure straight in the face again for the second time as we built that. We were able, through a contact, to find a gentleman in North Carolina who'd run a sweater factory, always wanted to have his own company. I set up a cutting table and 2 sewing machines in his basement, and he got those uniforms out. And then now, of course, we have 4 plants, and we do 1 million pieces and so on. But it was a close call. It was a close call. The third thing that happened, you saw our competitions were kind of featured here. We kind of came up with a concept of a modern-day cheerleading competition. And the idea was not that we saw this great way to make extra money. It was to showcase these great athletes and our style and get people to pay us to come to them. We didn't have any money. And so I said, we're going to do this. We're going to invite the top 20 teams that we know, and we're going to do it at Disney World because it's going to be fun and it'll be great with their brand. I go to Disney, I make the big presentation. They promptly showed me the door and said, we don't do concepts. Done. I thought, well, that's it. We were able to get a break and do it at SeaWorld, and now, of course, the competitions have blown up and they're on ESPN and so on. But the point I'm trying to make here to you is that if you want to start something and if you want to build something, there's going to be a lot of hard times. And let me give you what I think are just some of the things that I learned so you can kind of put this in the back of your mind. First of all, don't do it just for the money. Don't do it for the money. Do something. I'm not saying, people say, do something you love. I'm not so sure love is the right term. Do something you believe in. Do something you believe in. And if you do it the right way, the money will come. Success in your life, your ability to do what you want to do. Find something that you believe in and that you're willing to commit to. Secondly, expect a lot of hard work. And third, expect to be overcoming failures like I just told you about, because you will have it. You will have it. And the next thing is building your culture. As a leader of any organization, I believe that the most important thing is to set a good example. And by that, I see too many times where leaders of companies or organizations are sitting up here, their staff is doing this, all right? You don't see that here. You see Charlie Kirk in the middle of everything, right? He's a great leader. He's a great leader. Get your hands dirty. Be one of them. Yes, you're the leader, but you're also on the team, okay? Set the example and create an environment where people want to hook their star to what your vision is. And to do that, you've got to be a tough competitor. You've got to show them what winning looks like, but then you also have to have a big heart for them and be generous and bring them along and share in your success. If you do these things, don't worry about, listen, people talk about starting a company and they go, well, at Harvard Business School, we say we have to have customer analysis and market surveys and this detailed business plan. You know what? That's a bunch of bull, all right? It's a bunch of bull. Blah, 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 okay? Those are commodities. They're not the secret sauce. The secret sauce is you believing in something and you developing a team that shares your vision and you have the right culture and you treat them the right way. That is the key. Always remember, look forward, and that is the key. It's not all the detailed stuff. Keep your eye on the prize, all right? Now, so just a couple of ideas there. Now, let me kind of share a little bit of a transition for you. So I've been doing varsity, built it up to this company for a long time, and I got to that proverbial fork in the road a couple of years ago, where you go, okay, now what? Now what? I've done this, it's great, I love it, but now what? And the answer came to me in a way that I never expected. I was at our national high school championship, which you saw some of on TV here. It was the final day, and I don't know if any of you have been to the Disney sports complex with all the different venues, but we were using all the venues. At that event, there are 900 teams from all across the country, thousands of people and fans and family members and so on. And the final day, it's always down to the finals. We've got competition going in 3 venues, producing 2 television shows for ESPN. The entire complex is packed. We get close to the end, and I step outside from one of the arenas where we're doing television onto this big practice field. And the lights are there, the teams are practicing, you know, their little brothers and sisters are running around having fun. I look and I see our staff and what they're doing, all these young people who are pulling off this amazing event, and all of a sudden, I had this amazing feeling, and it just came over me. And most people say, yeah, what you said was, look what I did, right? Look what I did. That wasn't it. And this wasn't a feeling that I didn't expect. It overcame me emotionally. I'd never felt anything like it before. And the feeling was, how lucky am I? How lucky am I? How blessed am I to have had the opportunity, you know, a middle-class kid from Texas, to build this organization, to lead it, to have all these great young people hook their star to what I wanted to do because they believed in it and give it their effort over all these years. And to be able to create these great experiences and happy times for all these young people, how lucky am I? And the next part of it was, what do I do with that? And so as I processed that epiphany moment over the next couple of months and said, you know what I need to do, because I have had young people all the way through make up a very important part of the company, I need to find something to make the same opportunity for them. The next generation. What can I do to make sure those people that have a dream and they want to do something great, no matter how big, but something great, how can I make sure they have that opportunity? And I began to really do some research, and I kind of went back and thought about my middle-class roots and how many of these young people had come from middle-class and working families, said, that's where I need to be. And I did the research, and let me tell you what I found out about what's happened to the middle class in this country. So today, well, this is pre-pandemic, which now it's even worse. 40% of American workers live paycheck to paycheck. They don't have any money for a rainy day, for a family illness. They're living paycheck to paycheck, 40%. Their average unpaid credit card debt every month that they can't pay off, $7,000. Their kids have come home from college. They got a mountain of student debt. They can't find a job that pays them enough to live independently. Their health care costs have gone up, and they've lost the one thing that the middle class had for generations in this country, and that is a secure job, all right? They don't have that job security. That's a hell of a mess. It's all a mess. And then I thought about, well, how did this happen? You know, what really happened here to create this? And let me tell you what I found in my research. Excessive government regulation. You've heard people talk about that over the last couple of days, where they make it tough to start a business and hire people and do new things. A tax code that is totally unfair to the middle class. Don't let anybody kid you. The middle class pays the great majority of taxes in this country, right? They do. Healthcare costs that have doubled and tripled in the last 5 years. Very difficult. And I talked about college costs. You know, the burden of massive illegal immigration that puts all this pressure on public schools and our social systems, and bad trade policies that have been responsible for our losing millions of high-paying manufacturing jobs in this country shipped overseas, having very bad effects. So these are just some of the things. And I looked at this and I went, you know what? This has to change. When you go back and look at the time after World War II, decades just after that, when the GIs came home, they went back to work, they started raising families. For the next 40 years, they built the greatest economy in the history of the world. Okay? The middle class is under attack. It's being eviscerated. We have to stop this. We have to stop this. If we don't, we risk our prosperity and indeed our entire country. Okay? We have to stop it. So with that, I went, boom, I've got my answer from that epiphany moment. This is what I need to dedicate my life to. And so I have. I resigned my position from varsity recently. I have a team that's focusing on all different kinds of things, policies, laws, everything that we can do to help the middle class. So what does that look like? Well, first, thank you. Thank you. So let me tell you what that looks like. Let me tell you what that looks like, because I need your help. Okay, so let me tell you what that looks like. We started out and we did a lot of work in some of the contested congressional districts that President Trump won in 2016, and they got flipped in 18. We did rallies. We were in there. We were putting all kinds of pressure on those districts. We also had major get-out-the-vote efforts in some of the battleground states. And I think in all these things, we moved the needle through our organization, American Populace. And then the next thing I did after doing all that research and learning all that stuff, I said, I've got to put this down so people see it and understand it. The result was the book that I think some of you have on your chairs called American Restoration. I'm not hawking the book. It's free for you today, I think, compliments of Turning Point. And the subtitle is, thank you, the subtitle is How to Unshackle the Great Middle Class, all right? And in this book, you're going to find we address some of the issues I talked about earlier. We address what needs to be done about fair trade and bringing these jobs back, and especially to these Midwest towns where the result of these jobs leaving is high unemployment, high drug use, and increased suicide, okay? This has to be turned around. It has to be turned around. That's the first thing with the book. In that book, we address all these kinds of things, but let me tell you just a couple of examples, all right? First, I found that, you know, the one thing that underpins all these problems? You've heard a little bit about it in the last few weeks. Political corruption. I know there was some corruption. I had no idea how this manifests itself in our country. It's the obvious things like, you know, you can say, you know, buying votes, or, you know, you can imagine where that would happen, right? In this day and age. Things like that. Somebody being paid off to give a company a special break in the tax code, okay? I call that, it's illegal corruption. There's also what I found in the political world, legal corruption, okay? What does that mean? Well, let me give you an example of that. Let's just say the federal government and our Congress decide we are going to invest this year in these clean energy projects that will benefit everybody, okay? It's going to be wind turbines, and it's going to be solar farms, and it's going to be billions and billions of dollars, and they appropriate the money for that, okay? Then it goes to the government agency, and now companies make their pitch to be selected. Well, here's what you need to do next time you see that. Look who represents those companies. Look who's on the board of directors. Look who benefits, who wins the contract and benefits from all those billions of dollars. And you'll find family members of congressmen and bureaucrats. That's what you're going to find, all right? I give you Biden Inc., if you know what I'm talking about, right? So, another issue that I think that we deal with quite a bit in this book that I think really affects you, and I bet you're interested in. This is the endless foreign wars, as they're called now. When I was growing up, I remember a time I was riding with my father. It's a long time ago, and it was the Vietnam War was just getting started, and I was listening. I was 10 years old. I was listening to the radio, and they were talking about our troops doing this. And I asked, I said, Dad, my father was he was a man's man, grew up as a working cowboy in Texas. But we were talking, and I said, why are our soldiers there? He said, son, sometimes you just have to draw a line. Well, 10-year-old kid, that sounded pretty good, right? Yeah, tough. It kind of made me a hawk for most of the rest of my life. And then a few years ago, I was talking to my son, my young millennial son, and we were talking about what was happening in Afghanistan and Iraq, and I was giving him the hawks, the hawk grab. And he said, Dad, he's not a liberal, he's a libertarian, he's conservative. He said, Dad, do you realize in my entire conscious life, we've been at war? That's all I've known. Why? Boom. You're talking about an epiphany, right? So the more I looked at it, it's like, well, yeah, you're right. Why? What is the mission? Why do we still have thousands of troops? And thank God President Trump is bringing these troops home, right? Believe me when I tell you, it's not the sons and daughters of the wealthy elite and the Hollywood moguls that die on the sands in the Middle East. It's the sons and daughters of the middle and working people, middle class and working people in this country. So I developed as part of this book what I call Webb's imperative, and it's this. I say, if you're in a position where you're making a decision about war, if the cause or the war in which you're prepared to send someone else's child to risk their life, and you are not prepared to send your child to risk their life, don't do it. Period. Don't do it. So these are some of the issues. These are some of the issues that we talk about in the book and how the middle class is affected. And I hope you'll take a look at it and join the cause. I've also tried to. On my team and I are also joining with Will Chamberlain and the Human Events, which is a great digital media platform. I hope you're aware of it. If you're not, take a look at it. We're gonna great, very intellectual opinion pieces, conservative. We're adding a news division to kind of complement that. It's a lot of excitement. And then I've just founded something called Middle Class Warriors, which I hope you'll look at. And this is an organization designed to really drive policy in this country that underpins the well-being of the middle class. This is something that I believe in. I'm going to put the same effort here that I did in building Varsity. I talked to you at the very beginning about find something you believe in to build an organization. I've done that here. And I hope you'll take a look at it and join in. We definitely need you. And let me leave you with one last thing here. My generation, generations before you, have left you with some significant challenges. We're going to. They're real, okay? When I was growing up, I just had to worry about, going to school, maybe playing a few sports, what kind of part-time job I can get. I didn't have to worry about people trying to take away my personal freedoms like you do. I didn't have to worry about, things like this economy and the challenges there. I didn't have to worry about a multi-trillion-dollar debt that you're going to be left with to deal with. You're going to be left to deal with it. I mean, these are significant problems. But the younger people, the young generations in this country have always risen to the occasion, always. You are no different. You're no different. You know there's a fight. You're involved. You're here. You recognize it and you're willing to fight. And it is a fight worth fighting. So, yes. So, I know and I agree with so many of the speakers that have come before and talked about, what's happened to us in the election and how this can't stand, and, some of the other immediate things, what's happening, how some of the Democrats are using COVID for all these kind of repressive policies. But I agree with that. But what I'm talking about here today is the long game. These are going to be things, these are issues that will be here for a long time. And you know what? Together, we can make a difference. So I want to tell you, first of all, how proud I am of you, how great it is for you to be here, and also how much I appreciate being here with you. You are always so inspirational to me. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Have you had enough? Do you want to be free? Live free? Now, I've been telling you, we are in the fight of our lives. We may not be in uniform carrying muskets, but we are on a battlefield where the fight between good and evil and truth and lies unfolds.
Well, good morning, everyone. Oh, thank you. I love you back. Thank you. All right. So this morning, I said, what do you want me to talk about? They said, how about COVID? And I said, COVID? And they said, well, maybe you can make it exciting. So here goes COVID. The first thing I want you to remember is the last thing I want you to remember. And that is, you don't have to do what people tell you to do. And therein we start. So the pandemic comes, yes, from China, all right? And if you look at what they've done to us, I think it's quite clear of the impact that this virus has had on the United States of America. The impact of this virus has been economic, it has been financial, political, physical, emotional. It is across the board. It has affected every aspect of our lives. And it has taken from Donald Trump the crown jewel of his 4 years. And that crown jewel was an economy, the best economy that the United States of America had ever seen, without a doubt. And don't let anyone ever tell you that's not true. And the only way to make people question Donald Trump was to take away the crown jewel. Now, I'm not saying that it was necessarily intentional, but what I am saying is that what has happened as a result has been destructive. It has destroyed America's economy. Will there be a tomorrow? Absolutely. We are Americans. We are born of a revolution. It is in our DNA. It is who we are. And they will never stop us. Never. Now, I want you to remember that it is emotional bullying that they have used against us. If you don't buy into every component of this, then you are killing grandma. You are someone who doesn't care about other people. That is emotional, guilt-laced bullying. And it has no place in our lives. So don't bully me and don't tell me that I don't care about other people, all right? And let's talk about how this started. So there's this guy, and his name is Neil Ferguson. He's from the United Kingdom. He creates all these models. I talked about him in my book, in my last book, Don't Lie to Me. Neil Ferguson decides that there's a real problem in the UK. I don't remember, 10 or 15 years ago. If you're so young. I'm looking at all of you. You're so young. All right, but there's something called mad cow's disease, right? So they were afraid that all of the cows, all of the beef, all of the sheep had a disease. We couldn't eat any of the carnivores couldn't eat any meat. So what did they start doing? They started massacring cows and sheep and herds, literally massacring them. And then it was determined that Neil Ferguson was wrong. Gee, I'm sorry about all of your herd. I'm sorry that you lost your financial support. I'm sorry about that. But Neil Ferguson doesn't drift into the past. Neil Ferguson ends up giving a model to the United States to tell us how this pandemic is going to affect us, that 2.5 million Americans are going to die, and that we need to shut everything down right away. And so the president, when he is confronted with this, makes a decision that he doesn't want to make. He knows what the impact is going to be, but he shuts down the economy. He shuts down the economy, even though there are whispers that when you shut down the economy, then there's going to be all these concomitant problems that people aren't talking about, like suicide, depression, domestic violence, child abuse, drug addiction, alcoholism, which is so much easier in a pandemic because you know you can buy booze and weed, but, you know, forget about ever going to work, forget about going to the gym, but I'm jumping a little bit here. Let's talk about what we all did. We all sheltered in place. We all wore a mask. We all washed our hands. We knew what we had to do. I was the first person to have Jerome Adams, the Surgeon General of the United States, on my show Justice, okay? So the Surgeon General comes on my show and he says, nope, you don't need a mask. And then 2 weeks later, yep, you need a mask. Okay, all right, this is new. You know, maybe they don't know yet. And then it goes on from there. The contradictions, the fact that people just couldn't agree as to what we needed to do. Then I remember it was Fauci who said, give up shaking hands forever. Forget about shaking hands. And then someone said, he said, that'll be gone from cultures forever. And then he said, but it's okay if you meet somebody on Tinder. Go ahead, you can go meet them. I'm like, is he stupid or is it me? So, yeah, maybe it was me, I don't know. But so we were like children. We quietly did what we were told, and we were waiting to be let out of this imposed shelter in place. But then what happened was, we waited until the curve flattened. What was the whole point of it? The whole point of it was, you know what? We have to make sure that there's room in the hospitals so that when people get the virus, we can take care of them. Okay, you said it, I didn't. And so what does the president do? Because the liberal governors on the East Coast and the West Coast, I call them the commas. The commas. The United States is in the center of the commas. But so the liberal, it is. It's the heartland. It's America. East, and I'm from New York. But anyway, so they get panicked. So what does the president do? He brings in the mercy and the comfort, these naval ships, and he prepares them for everyone who's got the coronavirus, and they are literally empty. Maybe 20 patients, maybe, empty for months. And then they bring them back to, I don't know, Norfolk, Virginia, or wherever they came from. So all of this nonsense, we flattened the curve. We didn't need the naval ships as hospitals. We were all good. But no. The totalitarian instinct runs very strong in liberal governors. And their pathetic flexing of their muscles in order to keep us in place was evidenced across America. Now, I took a few down this morning. These are power-hungry governors. Although the president made the decision to shut down the economy, he left it up to the governors on how to reopen, which was the right decision as far as I'm concerned. So you've got Gretchen Whitmer from Michigan. Woo! So Gretchen Whitmer, she decides that because, you may know, but not everybody knows, that because 6 counties have a problem, she's going to shut down all 83 counties in her state, all right? And she says, you know what? You can buy booze and you can buy weed, but don't you dare buy plant seed. I'm not allowing anyone to buy plant seed or paint. Wait a minute. If I'm going to Home Depot, if I'm in this aisle, what the hell difference does it make to you if I go over to this aisle and get something else? As long as I'm 6 feet away and I have a mask. Forget her. Forget that woman. All right. Now, but I want you to think about the bigger issue. And here's the issue. You know, when we step back from it, you learn a little bit. My problem is I have to keep talking through all of it and just hope I get it right. But it was the big box companies that could survive. Middle America was crushed. Small businesses were crushed so that you can get Target and you can get Walmart and you can get the big stores to sell you ice cream. But you can't go to the ice cream parlor in your town. You can buy eyeglasses at Walmart, but you can't go to the optician who sells eyeglasses in your town. It was about protecting big business and crushing middle American economy. And it continues to this day. So, in addition to Whitmer, let me go through this. You had a Democratic governor from Louisiana. Woo! I don't know what he's doing in Louisiana, but that's not my business. John Bell Edwards, he says, you can't gather at a religious place that they then ticketed pastors. And a he got what? He is a hypocrite. All right, thank you. So the pastor comes out and the pastor says, are you kidding me? My church is cleaner than Walmart and the gas stations that people can go to. I go, good for him. All right, then you have the Democrat governor from Kentucky who bans all gatherings at churches. Places of worship were singled out as parishioners actually met in the parking lot listening in their car radio on Easter Sunday. These bozos forget the First Amendment and the right to religious liberty. They want to get rid of it. And the same in Wisconsin, and the same in New York, and the same in California. And I got the best one for you is the governor in New York, Cuomo. This guy mandates that COVID-infected patients be returned to nursing homes and long-term care facilities, who then infect the other people there, and upwards of 12,000 people died because of Andrew Cuomo's mandate. So as people dying, they were dying in these nursing homes, family couldn't visit, and family couldn't go to a funeral. It was the most gut-wrenching part of all of this. And the mayor in New York City, de Blasio, who's a dumber bozo than Cuomo, he is targeting Jewish funerals. Don't you dare get together for a Jewish funeral. It is a devolution. It is a destruction, or an attempted destruction of the First Amendment. And that you will see across the board whenever there's a pandemic. And the important thing for you to remember is that government has a place in your life, but government cannot control your life. Government cannot tell you what to say, when to say it, how to say it, and where to say it. Government cannot tell you if you can go to church or how many of you can go to church or whether you can respect God. Government does not have that right. Those rights are natural rights. We get them from God. The government doesn't give us those rights. And don't you ever forget that, ever. Now, so, you have to ask yourselves, why are they letting criminals out of jail, but jailing people who want to go to work? Why are they letting felons out en masse who come out and commit other crimes? We can prove it. We've got the evidence. We've got the facts. They don't care. They don't care about crime, but they want to arrest the hairdresser in Louisiana. They want to arrest the guy in Staten Island who's got a little pub that is 20 feet away from the part of the city that can stay open, but they want to crush him. You have to ask, is this a socialist dream? Is this a dream on the part of Democrats to impose socialism on the United States, to crush the middle class, to tell you you can only buy food when we tell you you can buy food, and you can't have a job, ergo you must rely on the government for money to buy food for your family? That's the question that you have to ask. Is that what is going on in America today? And as they defund the police, as they have the unmitigated goal to defund the police. Now, I don't know if you know my background. I've been a prosecutor, a judge, and a DA for over 3 decades. All right? I started the first domestic violence unit in the nation as a young prosecutor. I fought for battered women, I fought for abused children, and I went across this country setting up programs like mine in prosecutors' offices around America. For me, law and order is a virtue. It is not something to be taken lightly. And when they are involved in defunding the police, they are involved in the destruction of society. We are no longer a civilized society where police are defunded. And yet their job is to literally, this bimbo from Oregon, Kate Brown, okay, that governor actually says, well, you know, on Thanksgiving, if your neighbors have too many people at their dinner table, you might want to call the police the way you do when the music is too loud. Hey, idiot, what if I have 7 kids? Shall I throw one outside because you're only allowing 6 at the dinner table for Thanksgiving? Are you stupid? So, here we are. Here we are. Justice Alito. Yeah, Supreme Court Justice Alito. He gave a speech last month to the Federalist Society. I was blown away by his speech, which means I agreed with it. He says that previously unimaginable restrictions have been prolonged and severe in 2020 under the guise of COVID. Things that we couldn't imagine. He did not use these words, but it's akin to house arrest. It is akin to house arrest, where we find out that 66% of the people in New York City who get COVID were living in the same house where they were required to shelter in place. 66% of all the cases came from people staying in the same house. So coronavirus is now the excuse to run rampant over the Constitution. And the way he describes it is this. He says, we have never before seen restrictions as severe, extensive, and prolonged. And he says that the right of freedom of speech has been impacted. Now, I can tell you that myself. Freedom of speech was impacted 4 years ago before Donald Trump became president. If you don't say politically correct things, if you don't say terms the way people want you to say them, then you are denied your right to free speech. That is a denial of your First Amendment rights, and it is just plain wrong. But Alito talks about speeches, conferences, lectures, all being shut down, the live events. And he talks about churches, synagogues, and mosques being closed or forced to be closed. He talks about the courts being closed because of the coronavirus. You're denied your right to a speedy trial. So you've got denial of free speech, denial of religious freedom, denial of a speedy trial. And he talks about that seminal case in Nevada. The case in Nevada where a pastor of the Calvary Chapel brought a lawsuit and said, they are limiting us to 49 people in my chapel. And the Supreme Court came down with a decision. The United States Supreme Court, this is before Amy Coney Barrett, although after what they did with the Texas case, I don't have a lot of faith in any of them, but that's another issue. I could talk about that all day, but we're not going to. So Gorsuch dissents from the majority opinion, where they ruled, if you want to go to a multiplex theater, those 18 theater places, you want to go to a movie with all your friends, have at it. You want to go to a casino, you want to play a little craps, a little blackjack, how about you hit the roulette wheel, have at it. But don't you dare go to Calvary Chapel in more than 49 people. That is the United States Supreme Court. To me, it sounds like big business. The theaters, as well as the casinos, are winning with the courts where religious liberty, which is not the First Amendment, it is in the First Amendment, is losing. And even Gorsuch issued a dissent saying, nowhere in the world does Caesar's palace outlaw or outrule the Calvary Chapel. Chilling, chilling words. So what we've got now is a pandemic, and your issue is very simple. Are you going to let government control your life? You have to follow the rules. You'll lose a license, whether it's your hairdressing license, your liquor license, but it all comes down to who we elect. And COVID was used for the biggest thing that happened in 2020, and that was ballot harvesting. And it was the intent from H.R. number 3 in January of 2020, where they wanted to expand and extend voting rights that included ballot mail-in voting. If you can't see the bigger picture, then I can't explain it any more than this. We have to understand that as Americans, we have liberties that the government cannot control. We have to be smart about it, that we have to join together in numbers. We have to vote for people who reflect our beliefs and hold their feet to the fire. Never let them go. Never. And finally, With everything that's happening in this country, the most important thing that we can do is understand that things will pass. This country went through a civil war. Right now, it feels like a civil war. There are two opposing sides in this country now. The only way to win this war is to fight, is to be united, and is to do it legally. There are always loopholes. Do it legally, but don't ever allow them to suppress you and your constitutional rights. God bless you and thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Hey guys, I'm Isabel Brown, one of our TPUSA contributors. Thanks to your ongoing support of TPUSA, we can start new productions, new chapters at schools all over the country, and make events like SAS 2020 possible. You can make a year-end tax-deductible donation at tpusa.com/donate.
Hello, I'm U.S. Senator Marsha Blackburn, and first of all, thank you to Turning Point USA for hosting this event for our students to get connected. And I have to tell you, I know this is going to be another successful event. It is just so important that you, all of your generation, get involved in the political process. The battles we're fighting today, they're all about you. And I was so encouraged by the support I saw from students like you all across this country in campaigning for President Donald Trump. Thank you for your efforts. And I hope, and kind of one of my Christmas wishes, is that you all are going to stay involved because we need you in Georgia. Call your friends. Be sure they get out to vote. When we talk about the Georgia race, it really is a socialism versus freedom fight there in Georgia. You know, Chuck Schumer, who is trying to take the Senate, says that now he needs to go take Georgia, and then he's going to change America. And that's right. He wants to change America. So, what does that mean? It means that if Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi are running the show on Capitol Hill, they are going to begin the process of turning America into a socialist nation. That's why he's fighting for two of the most liberal and radical Democrats I have ever seen. Radical liberal Raphael Warnock and trust fund socialist Jon Ossoff. They stand with Chuck Schumer, lockstep. And you know what? They've promised that they will be Chuck Schumer's agents of change. For example, radical liberal Raphael Warnock has criticized Israel, our strongest ally in the Middle East. He and Ossoff will work to cut funding to Israel and likely work to reverse the peace negotiations President Trump has worked so hard to secure. If elected, radical liberal Raphael Warnock and trust fund socialist Jon Ossoff will stand with Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, and AOC. They would be a rubber stamp for this left-leaning socialist agenda that includes expanding the Supreme Court, defunding the police, defunding the military, implementing the Green New Deal, installing government-run health care, and repealing President Donald Trump's tax cuts. They want to control every aspect of your life, from the time you get up in the morning to the time you put your head on the pillow at night. We cannot allow that to happen. You can't afford to see that happen. It's about your future. So we must hold the line. We must defend the Senate majority, the Republican Senate majority. Senators Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue are working tirelessly to preserve the American dream. They stand for freedom. They fight to protect our God-given rights. They protect the Second Amendment, and they support our trusted ally, Israel. We must send them back to the U.S. Senate to protect the soul of America, to protect our first principles, and to reject Chuck Schumer's socialist agenda. Please help us spread the word. Get to all your friends in Georgia and let them know that early voting is happening now and that Election Day is January 5th, and we need their vote. And please visit gabattleground.com to volunteer, come help us knock on some doors, or to donate. Give your friends a Christmas present by making a donation to gabattleground.com. We must all come together and stop Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi from advancing their socialist agenda. Oh, I've got to say thank you ever so much. I am so grateful for the opportunity to join you, and may God bless America.
Hi, I'm Senator Rick Scott. I'm proud to welcome you all to the great state of Florida for Turning Point USA's Student Action Summit. It's amazing to see so many talented young people take an interest in public policy and the direction of our great nation. Our students are the future leaders of our state and nation, and your dedication is so important to our continued success. Always remember, a good education is a strong foundation for living your dreams. So keep studying and working hard. There's no limit to what you can accomplish. And as a United States Senator, I'll keep fighting to make sure you have the opportunity to live the American dream. Thank you.
It's T-shirt time! Let's make some noise! Who wants some T-shirts? We can't hear you! Who wants some We gotta get louder. Come on, who wants T-shirts?
Yeah. Get a feeling that I never had before. No. I get a good feeling, yeah. Oh, sometimes I get a good feeling, yeah. Get a feeling that I never had before. No. I get a good feeling.
Who wants them?
Yeah.
Come on, let's make some noise!
I'm one of the greatest, ain't no debating on it. I'm still levitated, I'm heavily medicated. Ironic, I gave him love and they end up hating on me. She told me she loved me and she been waiting. Been fighting hard for your love and I'm running thin on my patience. Needing someone to hug, even took it back to the basics. You see what you got me out here doing? Might have threw me off, but can't nobody stop the movement. Let's go. Left foot, right foot, levitating. Pop stars, do a leap with the baby. I had to lace my shoes for all the blessings I was chasing. If I ever slip, I fall into a better situation. So catch up, go put some cheese on it, get out and get your bread up. They always leave when you fall, but you run together. Weight of the world on my shoulders, I kept my head up. Now baby, stand up, cause girl, you
want me, I want you, baby.
Come on, let's make some noise.
The Milky Way, we're renegades. Yeah, 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 yeah. I got you, moonlight, you're my starlight. I need you all night. Come on, dance with me. I'm levitating. You,
what's up?
moonlight, you're my starlight. I need you all night. Come on, dance with me. I'm levitating. You can fly away with me tonight. So you can fly away with me tonight. Baby, let me take you for a ride. Yeah, 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 yeah. I'm levitating. You can fly away with me tonight. So you can fly away with me tonight. Baby, let me take you for a ride. Yeah, 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 yeah. My love is like a rocket, watch it blast off. And I'm feeling so electric, dance on awesome. And even if I wanted to, I can't stop. Yeah, 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 yeah. My love is like a rocket, watch it blast off. And I'm feeling so electric, dance my ass off. And even if I wanted to, I can't stop. Yeah, 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 yeah. You want me, I want you, baby. My sugar boo, I'm levitating. The Milky Way, we're renegading. I got you, moonlight, you're my starlight. I need you all night. Come on, dance with me. I'm levitating. You can fly away with me tonight. You can fly away with me tonight. Baby, let me take you for a ride. Yeah, 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 yeah. I'm levitating. You can fly away with me tonight. You can fly away with me tonight. Baby, let me take you for a ride. Yeah, 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 yeah. I got you, moonlight, you're my starlight. I need you all night.
This is that ice cold Michelle fight for that white gold. This one for them hood girls, them good girls, straight masterpieces. Styling, wildin', living it up in the city. Got Chuck's on with Saint Laurent. Gotta kiss myself, I'm so pretty. I'm too hot. Call the police and the fireman. I'm too hot. Make a dragon wanna retire, man. I'm too hot. Say my name, you know who I am. I'm too hot. And my band bought that money. Break it down. Girls hit you, hallelujah. Girls hit you, hallelujah. Girls hit you, hallelujah. Cause Uptown Funk don't give it to you. Cause Uptown Funk don't give it to you. Cause Uptown Funk don't give it to you. Saturday night and we in the spot. Don't believe me, just watch. 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 Hey, 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 oh! Stop. Wait a minute. Fill my cup, put some nigga in it. Take a sip, sign the check. Julio, get the stretch. Right to Harlem, Hollywood, Jackson, Mississippi. If we show up, we gon' show out. Smoother than a fresh drop skipping. I'm too hot. Call the police and the fireman. I'm too hot. Make a dragon wanna retire, man. I'm too hot. Trick, say my name, you know who I am. I'm too hot. And my band bought that money. Break it down. Girls hit you, hallelujah. Girls hit you, hallelujah. Girls hit you, hallelujah. Cause Uptown Funk don't give it to you. Cause Uptown Funk don't give it to you. Cause Uptown Funk don't give it to you. Saturday night and we in the spot. Don't believe me, just watch. Come on. Don't believe me, just watch. 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 Hey, hey, hey. something. Uptown, funk you up. Uptown, funk you up. Uptown, funk you up. Uptown, funk you up. Come on, dance, jump on it. That's why I need a one dance. Got a Hennessy in my hand. One more time, or I'll go.
Hey, everybody. Good morning. So we have an all-star panel this morning of some absolutely incredible and thoughtful writers and also publishers. We have Chris Bedford. Many of you know The Federalist, so we have another great representation from The Federalist. Darren Beatty, who runs Revolver.news, doing some very good work and has worked with President Trump. And also, of course, Chris Buskirk from American Greatness, amgreatness.com, and Will Chamberlain from Human Events, humanevents.com. So we have a lot to unpack, and we are kind of talking backstage, kind of some of the big kind of topic issues we wanted to touch on. We did want to do a panel and a discussion on China, and which is America's greatest enemy, that for many different reasons has just kind of been ignored over the last couple decades. And so, Chris, I want to start with you. You've been looking into this in a variety of different ways, but the way I want to really start this conversation is how China has infiltrated our political system. Not just that they're our enemy, kind of which is the typical kind of neoconservative warmongering way of talking about it, about how they're blocking, islands in the South China Sea. We know that. But can you talk about how they're actually in our political system, how they're purchasing pieces of legislation for their own favor, or they are within our country and very few people actually want to recognize it?
So, yeah, absolutely, and thanks for having me. It's great to be here, guys. This is phenomenal. The Chinese have infiltrated basically every level of our society, not simply our technology, but our schools, our donor class, our politics, our businesses. Now, the people, if you go to China, there's 1 billion people, and a lot of the people who live there are phenomenal. They're wholesome people, they're good people, and you'll never meet a single one of them in the United States. You'll never meet a single one of them in any country, England and London, outside of China, because in order to leave China, you have to get approval. It's not just, you have to be a part of the wealth and class system, which means you have to be a part of the Chinese Communist Party. You can't just come from China to come study at Georgetown University without making some promises and keeping in touch with people. And you can live your own life and do your own thing here. You rise up and you start working for Cisco Systems, or you start working for a senator, or you start working anywhere. Eric Swalwell, exactly. They're going to come back and they're going to say, hey, remember us. And they can reach out and they can touch you. I've been out in California with people who are working with dissidents, Chinese dissidents, to expose what the government's doing. And they're coming into the hotel. The agents are sitting there at pool. They're getting tables next to him and his wife when they had dinner at night. Just constant levels of harassment. Now, that's times 1,000 if you're a Chinese citizen or a former Chinese citizen who's got a grandmother or a sister or a neighbor or a brother who's still in China. They could hurt that person, and you're going to do what you want. And there's also a patriotic feeling, too, among a lot of them to do what the party wants. They're throughout the entire country, all through the education systems. The schools are in on it. They make the money. The companies are in on it. They make the money. And that's a serious, serious issue we have to deal with as a country. And I'm not too bullish on it right now.
Yeah, it seems as if that the Chinese Communist Party has successfully done what the Soviet Union never could, which is actually immerse themselves into the highest levels of the American political system, but also in economic, business, finance, and other ways. So Darren, can you talk about this also from the big tech angle, on how it seems that big tech seems to be perfectly okay with working with the Chinese Communist Party, but not even our own country and government?
Yes, I think this should be approached from a number of angles. Certainly you have big tech who in many ways cooperate with China. I think in another way, though, and maybe the most important way, is that our own big tech companies have come to censor us and have the same relationship to us that the Chinese tech has in relation to its own citizens. And I think, yes, infiltration, yes, cooperation, these are very serious issues. But my chief concern is actually that our big tech's relationship to our own population, this new censorship regime that's emerged independently within the United States, us becoming more and more like China, even as we critique China more and more in the public discourse, that's really a dangerous development, and it's a dangerous development for our own sake, and it also completely evaporates any moral authority which we might need to visit this important critique against China. So that's my principal concern, is that whereas China, through the government, censors its citizens, we've simply outsourced those dirty deeds, the censorship regime, to the private sector in the form of these big tech companies. And so a lot of us, we will celebrate, for instance, when the president issued his order against TikTok, right? We all are concerned about TikTok, and it's true, it is a concern. But at the same time, the big tech companies that we know, the American companies, Google, etc., those are the companies censoring the American citizens far more, and that has arguably a far more severe effect on our own liberties and our own discourse than anything China's done. So I think in the most general terms, while I'm very much someone who appreciates the threat of China, I think ultimately our concern, our criticism, our indignation needs to be focused on the fact that our own ruling class is corrupt, incompetent, dysfunctional, and perhaps even illegitimate. And it's not as though our ruling class gets most important things right, and they're uniquely wrong with respect to China. If that were the case, then I would be all for just focusing on China, China, China. But it's not the case. Our ruling class has gotten every single important thing wrong for the past several decades. And so what we really have is not a problem with China, a China problem. They're just doing what's in their own best interest, which I'd expect from any country. What we have is an American ruling class problem. And if we don't fix that problem, we're not going to get China right, or anything else for that matter. So that's why I like to say, Revolver.news and other places, this piece on China that came out to great controversy and provocation really, is that all of the Chinese critique, very legitimate, very important. But ultimately, I want you all to remember that the enemies of the American people are not any foreign country or foreign adversary. The true enemies of the American people, the corrupt ruling class that controls America.
And Darren, that's a great point, because if we had a ruling class that cared about our country and cared about our citizens, China, despite their best attempts and their billions of dollars, it would fall flat. They wouldn't be able to penetrate the top levels of government and finance if a ruling class said, no, that's not going to happen here, okay? And we're going to take responsibility for this country. And I want to build that out more. But Chris, you've talked about this. I want to go this in two ways. I want you to talk about how, I don't know if you're able to talk about this publicly, about how you've been, let's just say, formulating an idea that we need better rulers, right? A better, more responsible ruling class. I know that you talked about maybe formulating that into a book. But also, I want you to also to talk about something you and I have chatted about on our podcast, which is how some people on the right are, they're happy to talk about China, but they talk about it strictly, I believe, to just go basically expand the defense budget, not in terms of economic or culture, but they see this almost as the next frontier to be able to kind of feed the war incorporated beast. So if you could unpack those two things.
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to. And a lot of what I say is going to have some similar themes to what Darren was just talking about. But my critique, I think, is focused on the right in a certain sense. It's kind of like we got to keep our own house in order before we think about what the American left is doing. Having said that, I'm going to start off with an example from the Obama administration, and sort of undermine what I just said. But the guy who ran in the Obama White House, the guy who ran cybersecurity policy was a guy named Samir Jain. When he left the Obama administration, he went into the lobbying business. I know, shocker, right? And who does he represent? He represents Chinese companies. In other words, he wrote the policies on national cybersecurity and then left the Obama White House and took a job working through the rules on behalf of companies like Huawei and others. And so this goes to the point, I think, that Darren was making, which is that it's American elites who basically have a for sale sign out and says, you pay me $100,000 or $1 million or whatever it is. I know the system in America, and I will get you what you want. Now, so that's kind of an overall critique of our occupational elites, which I think is probably the best way to think about them. They are sellouts, and they are for sale. I mean, and by the way, China knows it, and they're for sale pretty cheap. I mean, when you sell a country of $330 million for a few $100,000 in consulting fees, really? I mean, you couldn't do any better than that? I mean, it's immoral to be doing it, but gosh. Let me come back to the defense angle on this, because this is really an issue for the neocon right and some of the sort of, I don't know, sort of the mainstream right even in America, which is to look at China and say, okay, got it. This is, my frame on this is Cold War 2.0. They're Russia, we're America, it's 1955, and we've heard some Republican senators talk about this, say, I know what we're going to do about China. We're going to build 2 new carrier battle groups, and we're going to send them to the South China Sea. Why? Because we're going to wage war? We're going to wage a war in Asia? That's absurd. It's dangerous, and what it is it's not a war we could win. It is a war that either would be lost by the United States or would turn into a nuclear exchange, which is pointless. That is not how you defend American interests abroad. It is a way either to act as a cope because you don't know what to do about China, and so you say, I know, we'll just spend more on the defense budget, or it is, in the alternative, if it's not a cope, that means you just actually have no idea what the threat from China is. And the threat from China is not primarily a military threat. The threat from China is an economic threat. It's a country that's going to overtake, if it hasn't already overtaken the United States in GDP growth, it will soon. Some people think, like Bannon has been saying for years, if you look at it a different way, they've already done it. But it's 1.3, 1.4 billion people versus 330 million people. They're catching up quickly. And we just have to recognize that we're entering a multipolar world. And that's okay. It's something that we don't really have control over. What we have to do is look to our own interests. And that means how do we look at what China is doing, say the Belt and Road Initiative, where they're buying of American institutions, universities, political players in the United States. And we look at that and we say, what we need to do is build up the American middle class. We need to make this country more prosperous. We need to tend to this country as opposed to saying, well, the solution is send more carrier groups abroad. That just doesn't do it. It doesn't address the actual threat.
Well, and all of this has only been accelerated because of the lockdowns, which has been the greatest handout to the American ruling class and billionaire class imaginable. And one of the things I do want to also get into is the Great Reset, which people are openly talking about at the World Economic Forum to obliterate current currency markets and basically reposition China as the primary center of economic, cultural, and military activity on the entire planet, and also destroy any sort of American sovereignty alongside of it. And the lockdowns are directly related to this in every single regard. And so, Will, I want you to talk about the Chinese issue and their infiltration of our country, but also I want you to connect it with some of the writing that you've done on big tech as well. You've been calling for a digital Bill of Rights. You've been talking about, you believe platform access is a constitutional right. I actually think that China gets more powerful when our own tech censors act like the Chinese Communist Party, as Darren says, domestically. Can you help unpack that?
Sure. So first on the question of their infiltration, I mean, I think specifically the universities, I mean, this has got to be relevant to you guys. You're all college students, or the vast majority of you. So something very simple, a very simple anecdote about what China does to control debate in this country. So say you're a China expert at a university, like your job is to do work and publish papers on China. China pays attention to you. And if you say something negative, they take away your visa and you can't go to China anymore. So how are you going to be a China expert if you can't go to China, right? Like, that's a huge problem, and it shapes our entire academic discourse, and that's not to mention all the massive amount of money. Another problem, Chinese foreign students, Chinese nationals pay full freight. They're a huge source of the budget, and so universities give benefits to them. And so while they're teaching you guys woke critical race theory garbage, they're teaching Chinese nationals artificial intelligence and material science, and they're then going back to China and taking that knowledge with them. Our universities are a huge problem and are really essentially accelerating China's rise as this dominant multipolar power. As goes big tech, it's an absolute disgrace that our tech companies are more willing to work with Chinese businesses than they are with their own government. Project Maven, Google's AI program, Google refused to work with our Department of Defense, but was perfectly happy to work with a Chinese company. All Chinese companies have Communist Party cells by law. So effectively, Google sided with the Chinese Communist Party over America. Not okay. And we should be really happy that people like Ken Paxton and all the state attorneys general are suing Google now for antitrust. And the final issue, I guess, is one of basic censorship. Like, I think platform access should be thought of as a civil right. We should be thinking, as conservatives, it's not okay to discriminate against us on big tech platforms. You shouldn't have a sword of Damocles hanging over your head every time you post. Right? The problem is that these big tech companies want to treat us in the way that China treats the Uyghurs at the end of the day. Like, they see us as like kind of annoying, kind of gross, and they'd really like us to go off on our segregated social media ghettos. We shouldn't put up with that. We should demand that our social media companies treat us fairly, and if they don't, we should use whatever political power we can accrue in the next 2 to 4 years to make them do that.
Well said. So, Chris, can you talk about the economic damage that has been done from the lockdowns, from China, from all of this? And you did a great piece of The Federalist where you went throughout Pennsylvania and you saw firsthand the multi-decades of damage that this deindustrialization policy had. And I think it's very interesting to kind of look backwards on how the conservative movement, in some ways, was the kind of the chief, the driving force behind a lot of these kind of globalist trade ideas. And I think there is a consensus setting in, thanks to President Trump, who just liberated the conversation because he was the only one that could have possibly have done this, because it was quite honestly one of the 10 commandments of kind of the conservative movement. Thou shalt never speak ill of trade policy in any way whatsoever. And all of a sudden, I think the predominant viewpoint is, no, it's not a good thing that we just bring in endless piles of plastic from China and we get opioids in return. Like, that's not exactly a good deal for our workers. Can you comment on that, the human cost and the economic cost?
Yeah, that was the biggest trick that they pulled on us, some of these intellectuals, some of the libertarian intellectuals, that free markets and wanting people to be able to have economic freedom meant that we should have trade deals that benefit atheist slave states across the planet at the detriment of Pennsylvanians and people from Michigan and people from Ohio. That's completely insane. And we actually went along with it a long time because it was in the name of freedom and free markets, and that seems to really make sense to us. But it's kind of like revenge for the opium trade that the English used to have with the Chinese, where we have American and European and Canadian liberals who will make all of our manufacturing more expensive. They'll make it reliant on windmills and energy from the sun. And it's going to be more and more difficult to make things in this country, more and more expensive. They make those windmills in China, so they support it. They're fine. They're shipping that product over here at a profit, and it makes them more competitive against us. And then they sell us all this garbage. I mean, I used to get in arguments with some of the libertarian friends of mine 10 years ago over Walmart. You know, everyone's been to Walmart. Walmart can be a great thing. Sometimes you're in a small town, it's the only thing there. You might be wondering what used to be there before Walmart. Maybe it was actually a thriving town center. Maybe it was a local economy. But now you've got this place where a lot of the employees and a lot of the customers are subsidized by food stamps from taxpayers, by all kinds of different welfare programs, because they don't have jobs anymore, because their manufacturing's been outsourced to buy crap from China that's been subsidized by their slave labor camps and by their unbelievable working conditions to come over here to make U.S. U.S. products and make us poor and make our billionaires richer. This is completely insidious. It is completely against the national interest of anyone in America. And you should all be very, very concerned about that. I mean, it's tough, I tell you, because of all the trade rules that our ruling classes have put in and traded off. You can't find made in the USA in a lot of products. Talking to ranchers in Wyoming, you can't buy a steak that says made in the USA because China doesn't want that, Brazil doesn't want that, Canada doesn't want that. Why would our politicians agree to that kind of policy? Why would they care more what Brazil wants than what the United States wants and the farmers in Wyoming? Because they're sellouts, exactly. This is the kind of thing that needs to be called out over and over and over again. America first.
So Darren, I completely agree. And so Darren, can you talk about the Great Reset?
Yes, please.
And you've done a lot of research on this, I believe. I've seen some links on revolver.news. What is the Great Reset, and who's behind it?
Well, the Great Reset is a branding term, as you mentioned, from the World Economic Forum, basically that describes under a broad rubric all of the fundamental changes that they have in store for us, that they're going to shove down our throats using the pretext of this COVID virus. And I think I'd just like to say, since a lot of young people here, I really do believe that the COVID lockdowns amount to one of the greatest crimes against humanity short of war and genocide. In fact, of all of the studies from Revolver.news, one of which I'm most proud was a study commissioned by top academics, PhDs, who had to remain under pseudonyms for obvious reasons. But the study was very simple, and it really addressed the question of, do these COVID lockdowns save more life years than they actually lose from the disease? And it turned out that the lockdowns have real effects. It's not just the economy. You can't disaggregate people's lives from their livelihoods. And when you issue bleak employment prospects for young people, that translates down the road into diminished life expectancy, to overdoses. You're just seeing like there are more overdoses now in these past few months than we've ever had. It's record high. And it really gets to this perverse moral principle, because most legitimate societies practice a policy according to moral principle that it's the old who sacrifice for the young. And in this unprecedented case, we're told that we need to unprecedentedly suspend large swaths of the entire economy in order to protect from a disease whose victims' age is higher than the average life expectancy, to protect the theoretical 96-year-old with 7 comorbidities. We destroy the entire economy. Of course, it's a pretext. It's been, the excuse for the largest consolidation of power in our nation's history. But I think young people need to be acutely aware of the scam and the crime done against them, and you should be furious.
And that's it's partly why we're here, actually hosting an event in person. And I could also behind the Great Reset, World Economic Forum, and if you read their list, it's somewhat hilarious, but one of the things on the list is they want to get rid of meat by like 2035. It's on their list, and it's funny, but actually, Chris, I think you and I have talked about, actually, there's a reason for that. I think they have a very specific, I think, metaphysical reason why they want to do that. I don't know if you want to take that or not, but the other part of the list, they want to get rid of America as the top superpower. They want to have borderless nations, all of that. Chris, can you talk about how all of this, though, that we're talking about is not necessarily partisan? Both parties have participated in this. I want to be very clear about this, or else we're just going to kind of be, I think this is a post-political moment in our country right now. Can you talk about actually some people on the right have actually been more into the pro-China kind of status quo policy over the last couple decades?
So two things before.
It's always right.
Right. So I keep hearing sellouts too. Yeah, okay, we can't say it often enough. First of all, you're right about having a big in-person event. Good for you, so kudos to you and kudos to everybody for coming out here. One of the things that, on this point though, I want to stay on this point about in-person events just for a second, because you've done one of the first big ones in the nation. This is a peaceful protest, right? Do more of it. Everybody in here needs to do more in-person events. I mean, one of the things that, and Darren, you're talking about this sort of crime against the American people. I agree. It's separating people. It's atomizing people. There's something very human about being together in person, in real life, not on Zoom, Chinese-owned Zoom, not on FaceTime or whatever. There's something that you get that you can't get any other way, and by atomizing people and keeping us apart, it really is degrading and dehumanizing. We should fight back and push back against that at every possible opportunity. Now, on the no meat thing, I am going to pick that up. I mean, one of the things that I think is true is that I'm not going to go too far into this, but the short version of this is that a meat diet is anti-estrogenic, shall we say. It produces more testosterone, and look, the globalist left and part of the right is very much dedicated to feminizing society. And that,
it's 100%
and there's
true,
a
by the way.
biological aspect of this too. And so to the extent that you can reduce testosterone in the male body, that I think that works in tandem with the political, cultural, and economic goals that these people have. And that, we'll be eating steaks, by the way, right after this. Can
I join you?
Of course, yeah. And they'll be bloody and rare. Anyway, back to your actual question, Charlie.
You're going to take the meat.
Back to the actual question, though, the main point here is that this is a bipartisan problem. And there's a sense in which it's post-political in the sense that it is post-partisan in a way, but it's highly political. In other words, we need a new and a better politics that holds the occupational elites accountable for what they've done to the country. Because the United States elites of both parties, and you can see it in the rhetoric that they use, the things they say when they're campaigning, the things that they say when they're asking their donors for money, who their donors are. It is very, very much committed to this globalist idea as opposed to an idea of what's good for America, what's good for Americans. And this is something that is ahistorical for America. For the first couple hundred years of this country's existence, and I count that from the early 1600s until basically the 20th century, we busied ourselves doing one thing, building a new nation and conquering a continent. Like, we had this massive frontier, there was something for everybody to do, we pushed west, and then when the frontier closed, when we got to the Pacific, something sort of changed in the American psyche. We are the super energetic people, and we should be. But because I think of a political and cultural importation, shall we say, we turn that energy outwards. And that worked for America. Like, after World War II, we were the world hegemon. That's not the case at this point. We're the strongest country, of the biggest military, but this is a multipolar moment. And the thing that we need to recognize is that the Republican elites are very much sold out to big tech. They are very much sold out to the Davos man, sort of the World Economic Forum. This is an ideological problem for them. In some ways, it's also a donor problem for them. But the mass of Americans, the average person who lives in interior America, actually has done much worse over the past 50 years. Wages have stagnated since the early 70s. The middle class has gotten smaller. It's just been harder for people to sort of get married, buy a house, raise two children or 3 children, or in my case, 4 children. And this is something that we need to go back to these people on the right, on the left, and say, hold on a second, there are some objective measures we can use here. And if these objective measures aren't getting better for Americans, is it easier to buy a house? Is it easier to get married? Is it easier to have kids? Is the middle class growing, or is the middle class shrinking? If those things aren't going in this direction, I don't care if the stock market's going up. I don't care if GDP is going up, because it's not doing good things for the average American. And we have to get away from these abstractions and go back to, is life for the median person, exactly right, is it getting better or is it getting worse? That's the metric.
It's well said. And Will, so can you talk about how we need to think about these things in kind of non-dogmatic ways? You and I have talked about this a lot, where we just need to liberate our thinking, look at it issue by issue. And I think back to, what year was this? It was either 2012 or 2013 when Obama was thinking about striking in Syria. And he actually did, he said, I want the American people to decide. We're going to open up our phone lines. He did this kind of typical Obama thing. He was blown away because so many conservatives and liberals unified, grassroots conservatives, grassroots liberals, ended up not doing it, getting into another war in Syria, which would have been a huge mistake. And I just remember that moment. I think, use that as an example, I think we're going to have about 15 or 20 of those coming up in the coming years, where grassroots conservatives and honest, and I use that word, I use that word very precisely in the sense that, or carefully I should say, that I don't know how many there are left, but honest progressives that are willing to actually make the country a better place. When this tech issue comes up, I'd be willing to pair with anyone that actually wants to break up these tech companies. I don't care who they are. And so, Will, can you talk about how we need to look at this in non-dogmatic ways?
All right, so Some bright fireworks there. So I got a participation exercise to kind of get us into like a pragmatic view. Raise your hand if you own something that was made in Russia. Surprise, you just all outed yourself as vodka drinkers and the police are coming.
Something other than vodka.
Something. Oh yeah, I'm sure. How many of you own something that's made in China?
Yeah, everyone.
Everyone, right?
It's terrific.
Okay, so when people say like Russia is a greater threat than China, it's clown world. It's like Russia is just Saudi Arabia with caviar. They're not going to overtake us. And the other thing to think about, here's another really hard one with China, why it's so important. It took 40 years to win the Cold War, and Russia was full communist with an economic system that couldn't put toilet paper on the shelves. We're dealing with China, which is not doing the same silly things, and they have really sophisticated intelligence operations. So I think a big part of being pragmatic and finding honest people is, people like Glenn Greenwald and others you talked about yesterday, they're very, very critical of the less obsession with Russia because Russia is not a serious threat to our power. China is. And we need to find a way to there's a lot of broadly persuasive ways that we can argue about China being the serious problem and Russia being a trivial annoyance. And I think that's the biggest way. And so being practical on China, and then again, also being practical on big tech. For 2 years, I've been pushing a line that says, if you're a conservative and you don't want to regulate big tech, you're wrong. Sorry. It should be wanting to raise taxes as a conservative. It should be just a default hardline issue. And I think, 2 years ago that was a really radical position, but based on what I saw yesterday, it's now the mainstream position. And I think we shouldn't just allow our principles to essentially lead to our own subjugation. If big tech is going to oppress our freedom of speech, we need to be willing to use political power to achieve conservative ends.
So Chris, can we talk about some of the good guys that are actually fighting for this and what we can learn from them and how we can elevate and platform them, whether it be senators, Congress people in this space that are really doing the tough work. And I ask this question for a reason, because I want people to first know who are the ones that are fighting, because most are bad. I'd say most of the people in the United States Senate have really no interest in actually holding China accountable, suspending all trade with China, actually holding them accountable for the epidemiological Pearl Harbor that they launched, probably intentionally, we don't know. By the way, just to give you an idea, China, someone from the CCP is watching this conversation right now, and I don't think we'll ever be able to visit Wuhan. So and by the way, you guys probably too, so don't go, it's probably terrible. But can you talk about some of the good guys though, Chris? Some of the heroes that are actually doing the work that is necessary to challenge this kind of global reset, the Chinese agenda, and also some of the stuff big tech is doing.
Absolutely, and I'm not too bummed about not going to Wuhan, I'll tell you. I think I'll be fine. I prefer Palm Beach. Senator Marco Rubio actually stands out as someone who surprised me a little bit on this front with his focus on Huawei and focus on China's wishes to get into your technology. So if you have in your house Alexa or one of these other kind of machines that you can just speak to and it talks back and it's always listening, then, the chances that people in Beijing and in Langley and in Silicon Valley can figure out what's going on in your house are pretty high. And he's been at least pushing on some of these issues harder than most. But I think some of the big fights we're going to have are going to be more international. Right now, we're aligning in a place. We've always thought of Europe as kind of a pretty friendly place. Nowadays, the European Union's its own collection, its own empire, it's with its own motivations, and it's not very close with the United States right now. Not at all. Right now, we have England and Australia are pushing back against China, India pushing back against China, Japan. But Europe is really not. They're actually starting to sign up for some of the Silk Road initiatives. It's absolutely no surprise that just like the bubonic plague came from China through Italy to Europe, so did COVID, because of their close economic relations and the fact that the Italian government sold out the north of their country to the Chinese government. This is starting to spread, and while Xi Jinping is busy basically wrecking the planet and watching our civil liberties get torn to tatters, our economies hurt, well, he gets away with it somehow because Donald Trump is a bad guy, according to the media. Germany has said yes to Huawei coming in there and putting in their 5G networks. Now, if you have a Chinese government that builds a 5G network in your company, then they can turn off your car. I mean, you're in trouble here at some point. This technology is next level. And Europe is going to sell out, which is going to leave places like Eastern Europe really isolated between Russia, Europe, and the United States. We have to go to a place right now where our companies, our Facebooks, our Amazons, our allies are not going to be global citizens anymore. You work with us or you work against us. And some companies have gotten ahead of this already. They've started to split divisions into an Asia division that deals with China and then a Western division that deals with the United States, because this is coming down to an end, and this world is going to start to split again. Companies that have been trying to make billions of dollars everywhere are going to have to choose sides, or we're going to have to crack down on them. And get ready for that, because it's coming.
Well said. Darren or Chris, you guys want to comment on any people in particular you think worth singling out in this?
Good people or bad people?
How about you decide?
Well, I think some of the bad people, again, is I'd like to re-emphasize, the bad people are our own elites. And I think we always have to be attentive to the fact, I think it's very dark development over the course of Trump's presidency, is that broad swaths of our own national security apparatus have been repurposed and redeployed domestically in order to silence and crush the energies associated with Donald Trump's victory. And so I think while we want to fight the 5G war, fight the AI war for preeminence in the 21st century, we want to make sure that our in quotations, tech companies don't simply install a censorship regime domestically, because the censorship that Google deploys, the censorship that Facebook deploys, that's not coming at the behest of China. That is indigenous to our own country. And so even if the Chinese created this virus, I don't know if they did, assuming they did, they didn't create the mind virus that infects our ruling class that led us to these lockdowns. They didn't create the mind virus that inhabits our own tech companies that have translated into this censorship regime. And so I think we always need to be attentive to the fact that if we can't win China, we can't win anything else until we correct the problem of our own corrupt, dysfunctional, and illegitimate ruling class. So I'd always call them out first.
Chris, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I guess I'd just add one comment to that. When we think about some of these Silk Road or Belt and Road initiatives, and you look at Huawei moving into Europe, or they're very big in South America, all over the world, really, and we look at that and we say, Huawei is exerting the influence of the Chinese state in these countries for political and economic gain. If we look at any American company in the Fortune 100, can you say the same thing about them, that they are trying to advance the interests of the American people? It's just the opposite, and that is a fundamental problem. Like, that is a part of the mind virus that Darren's talking about that has infected all of the occupational elites, and I don't care if they are in corporate America or in the academy, in the universities, if they're in government, right? There is this sense that we're not Americans, like we're post-American, we're global citizens, and you don't have to push them. It's not like have to get a secret tape from Project Veritas where they say, I'm a global citizen, this is a global corporation, not an American corporation. They just say it in their annual report and at their stockholder meetings. And so that's a fundamental difference, and we need to go back to companies that are founded in this country, that use American capital, that use American labor, that are resident in this country, and say, look, you're either with us or against us. And that is a fundamental change of attitude that I think that we need to affect as citizens, as consumers, as individuals when we're dealing with these companies.
It's well said. Will, do you want to comment on?
We need to talk about Hunter Biden. It's a serious thing. Hunter Biden took $10 million from a massive Chinese energy conglomerate as a no-interest loan, and then somehow $1 million of that ended up in James Biden, Joe Biden's brother's account, for consulting fees. He took $1 million to represent Patrick Ho, but I can't find his name anywhere on the litigation papers. I have no idea how he billed those hours. There's a reason that the FBI is investigating him for all this stuff. we need, and for sure, whoever Trump's next attorney general is needs to appoint a special counsel to investigate Hunter Biden and his Chinese connections. It's a classic case of conflict of interest. Joe Biden cannot be trusted, and his attorney general cannot be trusted to investigate them. And it's important for the American people to know just how compromised the Biden family is with regard to China. So,
and don't let weak Republicans tell you special counsels get out of control. These guys get crazy. We don't want the big government. The Democrats have spent the last 4 years trying to hobble the Trump presidency, using government as a gun and special counsels to destroy conservatives, target our churches, target our president. And I'm done playing patty cake with these guys.
So we'll go in reverse order, Will, down the line quickly, because we're already over time. What can students do? I said yesterday, everyone here needs to become their own investigative reporter, use the smartphone that they all have, that they use quite a lot, and basically publicize anything that's happening on their campus or in their community, put it on social media, send it to reporters. What can students actually do in this fight so that this is not just a spectator sport, but they can participate? We'll go Will down the line.
Fight to get the Chinese money off of your campus. There are Confucius Institutes funded by the Chinese government at
Sure, some of you have Confucius Institutes at your campuses, yeah.
Yeah, you should be raising hell about those. That's absolutely unacceptable. Call out when you have students, teachers taking money for their own research projects. When you have classes, there are some universities where you have classes in high technology industries being taught to Chinese nationals by Chinese nationals in Mandarin. That shouldn't be happening. Not in American universities. China certainly doesn't let us do that. So that's what you can do.
Chris?
Yeah, I just want to underscore what you say there, Will. This is something that people who are outside of the science world don't really appreciate, is that a lot of the graduate level classes, there are labs at our most elite universities where the only language spoken is Mandarin. There is no English spoken. Okay, that's at our Ivy League universities. I think that is something that people need to, I don't know if there's people who are in that world in the room. If there are, let people know. That's a scandal, and that should not be allowed to stand. I want to go back to a point that when you ask about what can you do, yeah, everything you said, let us know at American Greatness, let anybody, Human Events or the Federalist or Revolver, let us know, because we'll amplify those things for you. But I guess at a more fundamental level, I want to go back to the thing I said earlier, which is find those people that you know, that you are close to, that you are friends with, that you can trust, and work with them locally. Get those people together, make sure that you have those in-person relationships. All right, this is the model that the church used to spread Christianity. It's also, by the way, more or less the model the Communist Party used to spread communism. Why? Because it's effective. Because when people form close-knit bonds with one another, they can be highly, highly effective at achieving their goals. And I would just encourage people to mimic that.
Darren.
Yes, I would second all of these comments. I think many of you have an obligation to create startups to become very wealthy and to become the next generation of donors who can support an elite and ruling class that actually isn't stupid, weak, and corrupt.
So that's a really good point before I get to Chris. If you're in high school or if you're in college and you have a great idea and you haven't borrowed a bunch of money yet, please just go start that business. You can always go back to college. I'm telling you, the college cartel, the scam of college is mostly about suppressing your entrepreneurial upside while you're young. When you're 17, 18, 19 years old, you have more energy and you have nothing to lose. And by the way, the left has done an amazing job of creating a culture around subsidizing kids not going to college to go build tech giants. And we as conservatives need to do that, and I think we're very supportive of that. We'll have a whole nother panel, by the way, around college and all that nonsense. Chris.
So I would look to some of the conservative activist history, which you've written on pretty extensively, and you guys are all involved with right now, because we've fought a Cold War on our campuses before. This is not the first rodeo, and the right did a pretty bang-up job, despite the fact that the left, behind the music, VH1 makes 1 million documentaries about how great the hippies were. The right was really active on campuses across the country. And before Turning Point USA, before Young Americans for Freedom, before Young Americans for Liberty, there was the student loyalty oath, which was pushed at Georgetown University, because Georgetown University and other universities were training academics from the United States to work in weapons programs. They were subsidized by the US government to help us win the Cold War with military power. And they didn't have to promise a single thing because that was called mean. Well, these guys got together at Georgetown and they said, well, I think you should pledge allegiance to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands if you are willing to take the money of the government to help us win this Cold War. And they ended up pushing it through and bringing in a lot of attention. They drew attention to the un-American activities like the Confucius Institutes. They drew attention to the radicals on their campuses that were trying to subvert the United States in favor of foreign governments. And you could do that too every day, and you've got more tools at your disposal than anyone has before you.
It's well said. And I'll close it just everyone on your campus, in your community, be noisy. Even if it's just, if you're the one person that is writing the letters to the editor, you would be amazed. These dictators, these despots, people like Whitmer and Newsom and Cuomo and Pritzker, like 10 people messaging and tweeting, that stuff actually gets seen by their staffers. That stuff gets mentioned in private meetings. That stuff gets mentioned when they're going from one thing to the other. Like, yeah, you're getting a lot of feedback, you know, Governor Pritzker, for all this. And they think a lot of feedback is like 15 tweets, okay? Like, be relentlessly noisy and stay on top of these leaders. You might not think like you're making a big difference with that, but all of a sudden you'll realize as soon as you start talking, more people will start talking, and that you have more power than ever before in this digital age, especially when you encounter one of these people. What did we say yesterday? Respectfully, take out your smartphone and ask powerful people questions. That's all you have to do. Ask powerful people questions. CEOs, county commissioners, mayors, university presidents, board of regent members, whatever. Whoever you encounter, if they are using their power as a way to suppress other people's freedom, just ask them questions. That's actually what journalism should be doing, and you guys have the power, and that's how we stop the next global reset from coming. God bless you guys. Let's give it up for this panel. Thank you guys so much.
Democrats use identity politics to keep people in line, to keep black people in line, to keep Latinos in line, to keep gay people in line. I'm black and gay, and I've seen them use the same tactics for black people as they do for gay people.
Be the person that does not bow to the mob. Don't be that weak idiot to the left.
What's going on, Turning Point USA Student Action Summit 2020? I am telling you, oh my God, 2020 has been the craziest decade ever. Like, just completely insane. And one of the best things that I did this year was I moved to the great state of Florida, which has allowed us to put on this amazing event with all of these amazing speakers, with all of you who are going to be on the front lines of this upcoming culture war battle that we are getting into over the next 4 years, right? So I've been with Turning Point for about 3 years at this point, about 2-3 years. And we talk a lot about socialism. We talk a lot about how socialism sucks. We talk a lot about how big government sucks. We talk about a lot of this stuff, but in 2020, this was the year where we saw all of this stuff happen with our own two eyes in our own country. So what did we see in 2020? What happened in 2020? We had a virus that came from China that has completely upended every single thing that we know about our society, that we know about each other. And there are so many people out there that are using this virus. They're using the fear of this virus. They are using the division that it causes to help usher in an era of socialism. So this is what they want. All of these congressmen and women, all these people on the left, the squad, the entertainment, the media elites, this is what they want, right? And what we have seen this year is that when you have these people push forth these policies, who gets hurt? The American people. And you see what a bunch of hypocrites these elitist leftists are. So when you have Nancy Pelosi talking about locking everything down and talking about having barbershops shut down and all this stuff shut down, but yet we see her going to get her hair done, going to get her hair did. I don't know if y'all been following me on Instagram for a while, but I had some pretty messed up haircuts that I had to get during lockdown, and I would have liked to have gone and get a better haircut as well. You have them locking down and shutting down entire cities across the country. You have them shutting down restaurants. You have Governor Newsom in California. Recall him, by the way. Shutting down restaurants, and by the way, getting caught at a restaurant and getting a $15,000 wine bill, right? You see Lori Lightfoot in Chicago shutting down everything. I was going to say something that's not nice, so I'll just leave that alone. No. So you have Lori Lightfoot wanting to shut down Chicago, wanting to shut these cities down, but when she gets caught getting a haircut, she says, oh, it's because she has to look good. And you know, look, it's going to take more than a haircut to do that. But we see the hypocrisy of these people. And what's going on right now is that we see that hypocrisy and we see the divisions that are being sown in American society right now. And one of the toughest things about having to watch everything that went on this year is that we were so busy sniping at each other that we weren't focused on the real enemy. You had an amazing panel that was here right before me, and they talked about who the real enemy is. They talked about the fact that China is the real enemy. Exactly. Yeah, China sucks. But they are the ones that did this to our country. And every time I see some leftist talking points about how, this is America's issue because we have to focus on the race and the racism and then all this other stuff, China laughs at us because they know how divided we are, and they know that those are the issues that divide us. And the saddest thing about that is to see China laughing at us. As a matter of fact, to see people that are spokespeople for them on Twitter that know exactly what to say. They will fix their mouths to talk about, quote unquote, systemic racism in America. And they'll say, America has to fix this and America has to do it. They will say these things while having people in concentration camps, while putting out a virus that has completely destroyed everything. And so we really need to focus on them as the real enemy. But another enemy that we're dealing right now is the left. And it is the scourge of socialism. And I remember being on this stage last year and being on all of these stages as we had all of our events last year. And we didn't know coronavirus was coming. We never saw any of this stuff coming. But I knew that there would only be one thing that would help us see exactly who these people are going to be when they get power. If we have learned anything this year, it is that socialism is about rules for thee, but not for me. And that is what this is about. And we are in a very vulnerable moment right now as Americans. We really are. There are some people that are your ages, maybe a couple of years older than you guys, and they're going to see everything that has gone on with the coronavirus pandemic. They are going to see restaurants getting locked down. They're going to see them losing their jobs. They're going to see going into a bad job market. They're going to see all of these things. And they're going to be like, man, maybe socialism isn't such a bad idea. They're going to say, maybe Andrew Yang is right, and maybe I should get a universal basic income. They're going to say things like, maybe AOC is right, and maybe there should be a $20 minimum wage or a $25 minimum wage. And they're going to say things like, maybe all of these people are right. Because God, if this is what happens, then I just need to be comfortable. I need to make sure that everything's going to be okay. And maybe there should be more government, and maybe more government could help make everything okay. But what we have to say to that right now over the next couple of years is hell no. We have to rise up against that. And so the question is, moving forward in this unique moment in American history where there's, an election literally being stolen right out from under us, but I'm not even going to get into that, right? Not even going to get into that. So the question is, how do we battle this stuff that's coming from the left? The question is, how do we battle these ideas? Because the issues that I have with our movement and some of the things that we talk about is that we're anti lots of things, right? We know big government sucks. We know socialism sucks. We know leftist ideas do not work. We know identity politics and the way that the left uses it sucks, right? But we have to start thinking more about what are we for? What do we believe in? How do we advocate for these things? If we know that capitalism is the greatest system ever and it is something that has raised more people out of poverty than any other situation, issue, program in the history of the world, how do we talk about that? And I think that it's not enough to just say socialism sucks. It's not enough to just say capitalism is amazing. We need to start looking to all of the things that has happened over the past years, and we have to say, look at that, that's socialism. This is socialism. And what we need all of you to do on your college campuses is to engage in these conversations and to have these conversations with people on your college campuses, because I'm telling you, the difference between winning and losing and the people that are on the front lines of the battle for America, for the culture war, for whatever you want to call it, is you. It is the conversations that you are having with your classmates. It is you standing up to your professors when they try to push leftist crap. Those are the issues that we're dealing with. And this is up to you guys to push forward. Now, if we say capitalism is amazing, how do we talk about that? Well, let me tell you a personal story. Of course, everybody knows my background, and I came from basically nothing in Akron, Ohio, and I just ran into brick walls year after year after year because I was somebody that, and you know, when I talk about journalism and when I talk about media, I talk about it because I actually went to Columbia University Graduate School of Journalism and have a degree that is not worth the paper that it's printed on, right? And the issue with that is that I kept on running into wall after wall after wall because I was always sitting and waiting for somebody to give me an opportunity. I can't go out and do this, or I can't build that for myself because CNN's going to do it for me. And they're going to discover me and it's going to be great. Or MSNBC is going to do it. Or this person's going to do it. Or that person's going to do it. And when I talk about capitalism and when I talk about entrepreneurship and how strong it is and how we have everything in us, it's because my own story over the past 2.5 years has been living proof of that. It is living proof of bootstrapping. It is living proof of the fact that whatever it is that you want to do, you have the tools right in your hands to do it. 2.5 years ago, I was a low-level producer for Fox Business. I said, I've got a voice. Number one, I was so tired of the left, I couldn't see straight. I was so tired of seeing people that looked like me being used to push ideas that actually hurt people that looked like me. I got tired of seeing black elites talk so much about race and racism and all of this stuff when there are so many. Number one, there are more black millionaires than at any point in American history right now, right? So if this systemic racism is such a thing, and this, this objectification or putting down black and brown people, if that was such a big thing, then why are there so many success stories? And I started really asking that question to myself. Why are there so many black and brown success stories? Why are there so many success stories regardless of color that come from this country? And that is about entrepreneurship, and that is about the attitude and mentality that you have to have when you are going about making your way through this world. And I'm telling you guys, that is the difference between the way we see the world and the way they see the world. Now, we talk a lot about, the identity politics stuff and the systemic racism and all of that crap. The fundamental difference is that we see the world as a place of limitless opportunity. We see the world as a place where every single person can be successful. And one of the reasons why I'm so in love with this country and that flag is because this is a place that makes it all possible. And I saw that for myself once I took the power into my own hands. We have these amazing supercomputers that are about this big, that a lot of you guys are holding on to right now, filming this and doing your stories, and there's so much opportunity there. And when I decided to just snap out of it and stop waiting for other people to give me opportunities and got that supercomputer out of my pocket and started making videos and started using my voice, it expanded into something that I never could have seen coming. When I started making videos on Instagram, I didn't know that I was going to be meeting the president. I didn't know I was going to be at the White House. I didn't know I was going to be on a private jet with Rick Grinnell. I didn't know any of that stuff was happening or was going to happen. What I knew is that I had a voice and I had something to say. And when I started leaning more towards conservatism is what I realized that the opportunity that we all have is already there. This is not something that is going to be handed to you. This is not something that people are going to be tripping over themselves to make you happen. This is America, and you've got to make yourself happen. And every single person in this room can do that. And so, look, how does this relate to being anti-socialism and pro-capitalism? How does this relate to every single thing that the left is saying right now? Well, it's very simple. Everything that is coming from the left right now is advocating for more government intervention. A higher minimum wage, whatever, right? A higher minimum wage. They want to, wipe away student loans, right? Student loan debt. And let's talk about that student loan debt. Let's talk about how destructive that idea is. As a matter of fact, I have a podcast. I don't know if you guys have listened to it. It's called Rob Smith is Problematic. And so if you've not listened to that, not downloaded it, download and subscribe right now. Tomorrow's episode is all about the quote-unquote student loan debt crisis. And what that quote-unquote crisis really is again, a bunch of elites playing the victim, because that is what they do on the left. And they want to play the victim, and they want the American taxpayer to bail them out. The vast majority of people that have upwards of $100,000 in student loan debt have that because they pursued advanced degrees. They have that because they have doctorates, and they have that because they went to law school and they did all that stuff. But you know what else it does? Is it helps them make vastly more money than they would have had they not done that. So why on earth is wiping away those tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loan debt, the American taxpayers burden. The burden that you are going to get once you guys start graduating and once you guys start making money. And by the way, when we're talking about capitalism and we're talking about advocating how amazing that system is, and I know you guys want to get involved, and you guys are all involved on your college campuses in lots of different ways. What we need more of, especially from your generation, is we want you guys starting your own businesses, starting your own companies, being bosses, being entrepreneurs. Because when you become successful and go into your own communities and people see you as that success story, they're going to ask you, how do I get there? Like, bro, with the Keep America Great cowboy hat on. This dude, say this guy starts a multi-million-dollar business, and he's rocking that cap with his multi-million-dollar business. People are going to ask, what's that all about? And all you have to say is capitalism, bro. Entrepreneurship. That is what it is. And so, guys, this is what is going to differentiate us from the left moving here on out. We have to start talking about these issues. We have to point out the hypocrisy of the left. We have to point out the greatness of capitalism. We have to point out the greatness of that flag and of this nation and what it represents. Because, look, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not a deep state guy. Like, I'm not none of that stuff, right? But when you look at some of the things that are being pushed out into the public, when you look at some of these ideas, this minimum wage, free student loan debt, free public college, healthcare for all of that other stuff, this stuff is being used, and this coronavirus pandemic is being used to get people used to the idea that they are entitled to something that they did not work for. And we don't want to get people used to that idea, right? We don't want people to get used to entitlements. We don't want people to get used to things they didn't work for, because let me tell you something. I am from Akron, Ohio. Like, there's a lot of people that try to play me, and they try to act like I'm like some trust fund kid or I was like some multimillionaire. No, absolutely not. Like, I'm from Akron, Ohio. I went in the military right out of high school so that I could go to college. I busted my hump trying to get to different places and trying to do all of these things. And the difference between us and them is I can tell you all, and you will all believe, that every single person in this room and in this great nation has the ability to do the exact same thing. So as we go into this battle against socialism, which is going to intensify over the next 4, 6, 10, 12 years, as we go into this battle against the left that we are going to need you all on the front lines for, as we go into this battle to save America, to protect that flag and this home and what we love, I want you all to realize that you have every single thing in you that you need right now to be on the front lines of this battle against socialism and for America, because this is a fight that is not going to stop today. This is not a fight that is going to stop tomorrow. This is not a fight that's going to stop in 2022. This is not a fight that is going to stop in 2024. This is a fight that is going to be going on as long as you live in this great nation of America. And it is a battle that I need every single person in here to continue to fight. Thank you. Thank you.
The left, and particularly leftist feminists, cannot understand is that it's not that we're voting against the sisterhood, it's not that we're voting against women's interests, it's that we have different values. That let's not ignore the scientific reality that a baby is a baby, and therefore, in my opinion, is deserving of the right to life.
Gosh, this is so exciting.
exciting. I haven't been in front of this many people in a long time. Are y'all having fun? Oh my gosh, so much energy too. Well, I am so excited to be here, especially in the state of Florida, one of the few states where we can have refuge from the tiny tyrants that are running the rest of the country. I'm so glad that you're here. I'm so thankful for the opportunity to come here. I always say that hi. Just by nature of being here, you are so well ahead of most people your age who would never take time out of their Christmas break to come and learn from other people and hear other people and be inspired by other people. So I'm just proud of you guys. I'm so thankful for you guys. And like I said, you are so welcome. You're my biggest fan? Wow, thank you so much. You said no, you are. Well, I'll let y'all duke it out over that, but thank you. Thank you so much. I am so glad to be here. So I'm really, really tired. You guys probably are too, of people using as the preface to their speech that this has been a crazy year. Like, I'm so tired of hearing that. Like, before every sermon and every speech, people are like, it's been crazy. And I'm like, yes, we all know it's been crazy. It's been a crazy year. But I don't know how else to start this speech. It's been a crazy year. And so I'm going to do exactly what I have said that I hate when people do. Sometimes I think, like, I was walking through the airport yesterday and I was like, what would myself a year ago think if I could see what was going on, if I could maybe watch like 30 minutes of the news? And I think that I would probably think it was actually a brain-eating virus for some of the politicians based on some of the restrictions that we've had. I think that I wouldn't believe some of the things that have been going on. And it's crazy to think, like, the kind of normalcy that we are craving. Like, we're like, can we just go back to being scared of, I don't know, war with Iran? Like, can we please just go back to that? Like, can we just worry about North Korea having nuclear weapons? I would really rather prefer my concern be over nuclear war than the things that we are going through right now. But it doesn't look like things are going to go back to normal. I think a lot of us have said that, okay, 2020 is going to be over. It's almost become a meme that we're like, this has been the craziest year. This has been the worst year. I can't wait for 2021. Well, it's in a few days, and it doesn't look like the fight is going to stop. It doesn't look like things are going to go back to normal. It doesn't seem like things are going to go back to just being smooth in how they were. And I think that it's okay if we make that adjustment. I think that we realize that we were created, that we were placed in this spot on this grand span of eternity for a particular purpose at this particular time for a reason, that maybe we weren't made for normal, like maybe we weren't made for complacency, maybe we weren't made to just sit back and enjoy all of the freedoms and the luxuries that we have in America. Like, maybe we were made, maybe this generation was made to fight. Like, maybe we were made for the risk that's in front of us. Like, maybe we were specifically put here at this time for the particular challenge that we're facing that previous generations didn't face, that future generations hopefully aren't going to face. So maybe it's okay that things aren't going to go back to normal, that things aren't going to be easy anymore. Maybe we weren't made for easy. Like, maybe we weren't made for apathy. Maybe we weren't made to just sit on our butts and pretend like everything is okay. Maybe we were made for the danger. Maybe we were made for the risk. Maybe we were made for the battle. I think so. And that's kind of how I encourage myself when I think about things not going back to normal, that maybe we were made for things not to be normal so that we could be the ones who are fighting. I've heard since the beginning of this whole thing, some politicians saying that this is an opportunity, that the economic crisis, that the calamity that people are going through, even the emotional turbulence that people are experiencing, that it's an opportunity. We've heard AOC, we've heard Bernie Sanders say similar things, that this is an opportunity to introduce people. You know, Rob was just talking about this, to introduce people to the policies that we think will make their life better. This is an opportunity to expand the power of the government to provide for people when they realize that they can no longer provide for themselves. And of course, we realize that that's very cruel. It's very cruel to capitalize on people's suffering. It's very cruel to capitalize on people losing their business and introducing yourself as some kind of governmental savior. It's very cruel to say we are going to tear down what has worked in this country and build back some kind of dystopia of our choosing, and to build back better, as Joe Biden has said. But the reality is that both sides have an opportunity. They have an opportunity to try to instill policies that we know don't work. They have an opportunity to take more power, which is what a lot of tiny tyrants in this country have done, even while they're not abiding by the rules that they have tried to arbitrarily place on other people. But we have an opportunity too. And not to ruin people's lives the way that it's happened, unfortunately, in a lot of states, not to tear down people's businesses, not to take away people's freedoms, not to exact more power over people, but to teach people a lesson by pointing to the hypocrisy and the power-hungry nature of some of our leaders, that the government makes a very cruel God, that the government is not your friend, that the government is not a good caretaker, the government is not a good dad, the government is not a good nanny, the government is not trustworthy, that if you do make government your God, as so many young people are told to do, if you make the government your caretaker, your moral arbiter, your safety net, whatever it is, you will realize that the government is a very cruel God. It's a very merciless God. It's an uncharitable God. It's an unforgiving God. It's not a God that we want to worship. That is our opportunity, to point people to the fact that the government will not save you. The government doesn't know your name. The government doesn't know what you had for lunch. The government doesn't know your interests. It doesn't care about you. It doesn't care about you and your family. And the sooner that we get people to realize that, the better off we all are. Whether we are talking about Republicans or Democrats, the fact of the matter is that the government is not your savior. The government is not your God. It is not worth your hope. It's not worth your faith. And it's not worth your trust. The government has really good purposes. Like, I'm not an anarchist. I wouldn't even describe myself as a libertarian. No offense to libertarians, the two of you out there. I think that the government has a really important role, and I think the government can, it can serve our well-being. That's what it was founded to do. That's what it's supposed to do. We have seen some politicians exemplify some really courageous leadership. I think Ron DeSantis is one of those politicians. In this past year. And so I'm not hating on all government, but I'm talking about the principle that we can't put too much hope in the government. It is not the authority of the government. And honestly, it's very disturbing that we've gotten used to this, but it's not the authority of the government to decide what is essential and what is not. Every job is essential to the person who is working in that job. Every paycheck is essential to the person who is trying to put food on the table for their family. Every bit of education, every class that is taken is essential to the young student that is depending on that class to graduate, maybe go to college, maybe start a business, and to get out of poverty. That's essential for that child. You going to church and worshiping God is essential. It is essential. And it's not up to someone like Ralph Northam to say that it's not. The time that you spend with your family, the fellowship that you have with your friends and with your community, all of that is essential. And that's because human beings aren't just material objects that can be satiated with $600 and a mask. Like, we are more than that. We are whole people. We have souls, we have hearts, we have minds. We have emotional, mental, spiritual needs in addition to physical and financial needs, and the government is not equipped and never will be able to meet those needs. That's why we need each other. That's why we need the God who created us. We need something so far beyond what the government can give us. I say this a lot. If you listen to my podcast, I host a podcast called Relatable, and we talk about theology. We talk about Theology, culture, and politics from a Christian conservative perspective, something that you may have heard me say a lot is that leftism gets human nature wrong. And I don't just mean everyone who is on the left. I don't mean everyone who is a Democrat. I'm talking about leftism as an ideology, or in more charitable terms, a philosophy. It gets human nature wrong because it is a secular humanist ideology, and it has been for over a century and a half now. Even if the people who ascribe to it don't realize it, it was created to replace religion. It was created to replace any kind of faith in God and dependence on the family and the institutions that God created. That is what it's been for its inception. It views human beings as these material objects, as clumps of cells, as just more evolved animals that can be socially engineered, that can be controlled and pushed around for, quote, the greater good. That has been the mindset, the worldview, and the basis for every left-wing revolution that has ended in bloodshed and suffering for the past 100 years. If you're talking about the Chinese Revolution, the Cambodian Revolution, it's all started with this secular humanist idea. From Chavez to Castro to Mugabe, the list goes on and on. It started with this idea that human beings don't have inherent rights given to them by God, that we were not created by a creator with equal rights and with equal liberties, but that we are just a bunch of clumps of cells that can be moved around as the people in power see fit. And the reason outlawing private property, the freedom to provide for yourself and your family, exchanging the family unit for state-run villages, as has happened in every far left-wing revolution over the past 100 years, the reason why these things don't work is because they get human nature wrong. Leftism gets human nature wrong. And this is where, those of you who listened to the podcast again, you knew theology was going to come in somewhere, but this is where your theology comes in. Whether you're an atheist, whether you're an agnostic, whether you're Jewish or you're a Christian, the fact of the matter is that politics are downstream from culture, and culture is downstream from theology. What you think about the world and who made the world and why we're here, again, no matter what your belief system is, will have an effect on what you think about everything else. That is why what you think and what you know about God, about the creator of the universe, matters, because it affects how you see the rest of the world. And so when I look at human nature from my Christian perspective, and when I'm trying to understand political systems, when I'm trying to understand social revolutions, I first have to look to the Word of God to tell me, okay, what does the creator of the universe and creator of human beings say that we are and that we need? And this is essentially why I think leftism gets human nature wrong, because it removes the creator from the picture, and therefore it can't understand the creature either. But in the Bible, we read that God honors private property through two simple commands, that thou shalt not steal and thou shalt not covet. The entirety of the socialist philosophy is obliterated in those two commandments, that thou shalt not steal and thou shalt not covet. If the God who made us is saying that, then I should probably trust it, that God made us to work. We read that in Genesis, even before sin entered the world. That work is not a necessary evil, but it's something that we were actually created to do, to provide for ourselves and to provide for our family. A lot of times we hear that Jesus was a socialist or Jesus was a communist, that working for what you have and providing for yourself and providing for your family has no biblical foundation. That's wrong. The Bible tells us in the creation account that human beings were not just made to work, but made to be productive. In Ephesians, in the New Testament, we hear, let the thief no longer steal, but rather let him labor so he can give generously, personally, and freely to those who need it. Not under government compulsion, but freely. And actually, it's 2 Corinthians 12:9 says that we should give to those in need generously, not under compulsion, for, quote, God loves a cheerful giver. God made the family. God made mom, dad, kids. In Genesis, we are made for this connection. We are made to build our lives and made to build our societies on what God made. So when I look at human nature and when I look at these issues, these are not political issues for me. Yes, they become political, unfortunately. They become part of our elections, unfortunately, but they're actually not political issues, they're human nature issues. And when I look across history at when societies have flourished and when they've thrived, I see that work, and I see that self-reliance, providing for you and your family, and I see that freedom of religion and reliance on the family and reliance on faith is what makes societies thrive and survive. God also made us to gather with the church. If you're a Christian or if you're a part of any religion that gathers together, and I mean this physically, we hear a lot that it's no different for people to gather over Zoom or to have, congregations online, but it's just not true. The Bible actually tells us that we are supposed to meet together, that we get something very real and very natural and very important from that in-person fellowship. Yes, amen. And so when I look at leftism, and when I look in particular at the policies that have been enacted over the past several months, the reason why so many people are suffering is not just because of economic calamity, but because of loneliness as well, because of isolation. Because again, we're not just physical beings, but we're spiritual beings, and so not all of our needs are being met. The reason why the suicide rate is so much higher is not because of the virus. It's because the needs that we have emotionally, mentally, spiritually are not being met in places where there are strict lockdowns, and that matters too. Like, who said that it's politically correct to only care about the deaths by coronavirus but not the deaths by suicide? Like, why don't we care about that? Why are we not supposed to care about the mental health of the elderly that are in the nursing homes, in isolation, dying by themselves? Why am I not supposed to care about the parents who had to bury their child by themselves, unable to have a proper memorial service because their child killed themselves because they've been alone for the past 5 months in front of a screen? Why can't I care about that? Why is the government telling me that I can only care about one kind of death? And why are so many leaders so unwilling to balance our spiritual and emotional needs with the physical needs of being protected from a virus? Why aren't more leaders balancing those things? Because leftism doesn't understand human nature, and the government is not our God. It can't meet those needs for us. That's why we need each other. That's why we need to realize what human nature is, why we need the things that we do, where they actually come from, and again, where our rights come from, and who can actually recognize those, and who can actually meet those, and which things are essential and which things are not, which should be up to us, not tiny tyrants who are doing things arbitrarily out of a hunger for power rather than an interest in our well-being. And it's interesting because people always argue with me about, the morality of capitalism or the morality of small government. And they say that capitalism is something that's contrived, or our freedoms, the idea of individual liberty is something that's contrived by right-wing evangelicals, that it really has no basis in reality, and that everyone would just be happier if we redistributed wealth and that we didn't have private property. You guys have heard about the Great Reset. I heard people talking about that earlier, to try to just make everyone equal, that's the natural state of being. That's how things have to really be. I read this book about North Korea earlier this year, and the thing that stunned me about it, this reporter was talking about how in North Korea, obviously, they are a communist country. They're not allowed to have capitalism. You're not allowed to provide for yourself. And the families there are starving. They don't have any food, and it's not because of lack of foreign aid. It's actually because the government there stops the aid from getting to the people. And so they are starving and they're dying. And so what they'll do is they'll create these illegal markets, and they'll smuggle in goods from China, and they'll buy and sell. They'll trade. They'll create these capitalist economies illegally in a communist state. And what's interesting about that is they've never been taught about supply and demand. Like, they've never been taught about capitalism. They've actually been indoctrinated in North Korea, like in other countries, their entire lives, that capitalism is selfish, that capitalism is bad, that evil American imperialists and Japanese imperialists and South Korean imperialists and these evil capitalists are the ones who are stopping them from getting food. And so they didn't learn about any of these things, but it's human nature. It's human nature, even in places that have never learned about capitalism, to provide for yourself, to provide for your family, supply and demand. And so as conservatives, we are trying to conserve that which is natural, that which is good, that which has created societies in which families and individuals can survive and thrive. And leftism doesn't get human nature. Tyranny works against human nature. The reason why communist revolutions always end in bloodshed is because it works against human nature. And that's what we've seen this year, is an attempt to try to obliterate that. Is an attempt to try to obliterate that in the name of the common good. It's always done in the name of the greater good. It's always done in the name of the common good. So what we have to do in the midst of this, I get this question a lot, is how do I push back against the things that are going on? Like, at what point do I stand up against tyranny? Like, at what points do I push back against this? And some of you are thinking, I don't have like a big presence on social media. I'm not an influencer. And I always say, yes, you are. You don't have to have a certain number of followers to be an influencer. You don't have to be an influencer to have influence. You have influence being exactly where you are. Like I said at the beginning of this speech, that God has purposed you exactly where you are for such a time as this, for a purpose that you can't even comprehend right now. And it may not be that you start a movement. You might not start an organization. You might not start a revolution. And that's okay. What you are called to is to be obedient and to be an excellent worker and to be a responsible person in the station that God has placed you in, to influence your circle for good. And the way that you resist tyranny is really easy. You abide by the things and you pursue the things that are good for human nature and good for society. And so you worship when you know that you are called to worship. You meet with your church when you know that you are called to meet with your church. You allow your friendships to flourish. In an age when people are telling you to cut off everyone who doesn't have any interest to you, you cultivate those relationships with your family members. You make sure that you are investing in the relationships that matter. You work hard, even when you don't like your job. You pursue things like family in an age that is filled with complete narcissists. You go against the grain in these subtle, everyday ways, and that is a quiet, subtle, and revolutionary way to wage resistance against the tyranny that is driving itself against human nature and everything that has made this country good. It's by being generous in a time where we are told to hoard our stuff, and being hospitable in a time that we are told to cut ourselves off. It's being kind and compassionate when people are constantly asking, what am I owed? What is someone going to give me? It's giving even when we feel like we can't anymore. It's all of the things that the left tells us that we don't have. It's responsibility, it's compassion, it's caring for the least of these. It's not just voting for a government official to take money from people who are richer than us and give it to people who are poorer than us and pat ourselves on the back while we're sitting on the couch. That's not going to cut it for compassion. We take that responsibility upon ourselves, and we take that generosity and that charity upon ourselves, and that's how we wage the quiet resistance against the tyranny that we are seeing. The founders knew that. The founders knew that that's what it would take to guard a republic, and that's still true today. And I really do believe that the people sitting in this room, that the people in this generation, that you are totally equipped and you are totally called to face the fight that's right in front of you. You might feel unequipped. You might feel like you don't know what you're saying, that you don't know what you're doing, that you don't have all the tools in your tool belt. I promise you that you weren't put here on accident, that you weren't a mistake, that you didn't just end up here, that God isn't surprised that you were born when you were born, that you are where you are. But you were put here purposely, with intention and with specificity. And I have every bit of faith in you that you are going to live up to whatever calling that God has placed on your life for the glory of God. And I'm just really excited. I'm really excited to be in this fight with you guys and to fight for the things that matter and to be on the front lines with all of you.
Okay, I'm almost done, but I have to do one thing. I have to tell you about a really good Christmas gift that you should give your girlfriend or your sister or your friend or yourself. And that has to do with everything we just talked about. I wrote a book that talks a lot about this stuff, and it's called You're Not Enough and That's Okay. Escaping the Toxic Culture of Self-Love. And it talks about the importance of caring about the things that matter. And instead of being narcissists, like most of, maybe a lot of your friends are, only caring about what you think of you, it's being a good citizen here on earth and caring about the things that matter and reaching out to the people that matter and having a purpose that goes beyond just self-love and self-empowerment and self-care, that actually seeks to serve those around you. And so if you are looking for a gift this Christmas, last minute Christmas shopping, that would be a good one. We actually wanted books here to sell, but unfortunately we don't have them. You'll just have to go online and find it. But again, thank you guys so much. Thank you for being so wonderful. And so brave, and that's it. Merry Christmas.
The words financial aid sound like relief or free money, but it really means student loans, which are processed without regard for your ability to repay those loans. And because the loan application step typically comes at the end of the college application process, after you've done all this work and are firmly committed, it's no wonder why most families don't even recognize they're being had. It's a really big problem because it's easy to qualify for student loans as they don't require any income verification and approvals don't evaluate your income to debt situation. Moreover, because these loans are actually from the federal government, not the universities themselves, the colleges don't care how much debt you accumulate. In fact, student loans represent 45% of all U.S. government assets. It's an asset for the government. It's a liability for families like yours. It amounts to nearly $1.6 trillion in student loan debt, and why 45,000 senior citizens had their Social Security checks garnished to repay these loans. That's why you need college funding experts. We'll help you save money regardless of whether you're upper income, middle income, or light on college funding resources. Discover how college funding experts can help your family. We invite you to register for a no-obligation assessment. To register, visit collegefundingexperts.com or call 877-99-COLLEGE. That's 877-99-COLLEGE.
Hello! How is everybody? MacBook. As promised, we're going to be giving this away, but I wanted to talk to you guys for just a quick second. You guys are at the tip of the spear. We are so proud to see all of you here. College Funding Experts works with families and students all over the country. There's one theme that you guys have heard over and over again here during this conference. It's individual action. If there's one thing that we can impart on you, it's that the college funding crisis, the student debt crisis, the college cost trap is built by design. Like a lot of the things that you guys are hearing about, it's designed that way. It's designed that way to put you in debt, and it's designed that way to hurt American families. Our mission is to educate families and educate students so that you guys don't get caught in that, which is why we are committed, firmly committed to a mission which is helping you guys and making sure that you guys have the information that you need in order to not get caught in that trap. So, as promised, our first winner is Ainsley Ford. Is Ainsley Ford here? No? Okay, well, Ainsley Ford, come see us at our booth. We are going to give you your beautiful MacBook. And we're going to be giving another one away before the end of the show. And I want to again thank all you guys for being here. You're part of the solution, and I want you guys to stay in the fight, okay? Thank you very much. God bless.
Two completely different worldviews, and one worldview says that it's okay to get violent to try and get what you want. It's pretty childish.
In times of peril, young people have stepped up and saved this country, abroad and at home.
America must come first. Its people must be our top priority.
I've been going around, and I'm sure that most of you can feel the momentum that the conservative movement is starting to garner. Can you feel it? Especially with young people, because, we've got this woke left, and they're extremely loud and extremely noisy, but when you strip away these ideas of Republican and Democrat, these labels we put on certain ideologies, and you offer, we want a limited government, we want you to rule your own life, it is amazing how many people agree with conservative doctrine. But also, especially during the year of 2020, I think the main reason we're gaining so much support is because being a Republican is more fun. I mean, we don't have to go and burn a city down to feel like we're helping people. We actually are able to gather together in person. I mean, I cannot believe that there are some governors telling us that we can't get together for Thanksgiving or we can't get together for Christmas. That is tyranny, and it needs to be fought. But I'm looking out at this crowd. I have had so much fun with all of you students because, like I said, it's more fun. But specifically, I have met a great number of you here who are from my home state of North Carolina. And now, all of you who put me here from North Carolina, you guys supported me, you guys fought for me, you volunteered, you did so much for me. And I'll tell you, to all of those students, I vow to you that I will not let you down. I will be your weapon in Washington, D.C., someone who will not back down. And I had a lot of people asking me, well, when you get to Washington, I mean, being so young, do you think they're gonna make you bend? They're gonna push you a certain way, make you more liberal, make you less conservative? I would just look at them and say, well, I don't think they're gonna bend, because first of all, we need some Republicans with some backbone, and my backbone is reinforced with titanium, so we're ready to fight. But the main reason that it's more fun to be a Republican, because we can go to bed tonight knowing that we are actively helping to create a better society for our friends, for our neighbors, for people who don't look like us, don't believe like us. We want all of them to have freedom. And being a Republican is more fun because it is the moral, the right, and the courageous thing to be. And so, I had this cool speech written. I was going to pop a wheelie and be really fun. It was going to be a lot of fun talking about. You want one more? We can do one more. There we go. But talking about being a Republican, I was working on this speech last night, and I got to this point, and I was saying, being a Republican is the moral, the right, and the just thing to do. And I was thinking to myself, in my heart of hearts, I know that there is something that I need to do. I know that there is something that is the right thing to do. But it's not a good move for my career in Washington. It's not a good move for me personally.
But then I started thinking to myself, I said, wow, that is the problem. Going to Washington is not a career. It is a mission that you are called to. And I see a lot of great North Carolina supporters right here. And just as I said, I vow to you that I will go to Washington to fight for you, to do the right thing, I realize that it is incumbent upon me to do what is right. And so I'm going to alter my speech quite a bit, and I know my comms team and all my advisors are probably freaking out right now. But my friends, I've been studying our Constitution, and when you look at it, it says that state legislators are the only body that can change election law within their own states. But when you look at what's happened in a lot of these liberal swing states that have liberal governors and liberal secretaries of state, you can see that they have broken the law and gone against our Constitution with this election. And so, because of that, on January 6th, as the people of Western North Carolina sent me to Washington to do a job, I will be contesting the election. And USA! And not only that, I have a message, and I don't know exactly which camera's doing it, but I'm going to look straight into that camera. I have a message for all other Republicans across the country. If you are not on the record calling for fair, free, and just elections now and in the future, I will come to your district and I will fund a primary opponent against you. For too long, for way too long, the Republican Party has just been the party of no that has always conceded things. They've let God out of our schools. They have let socialism creep into our country. I'm telling you, when I look out into this crowd, I see the new Republican Party. And my friends, just as I said that I vow to the people of North Carolina that I will go fight for them, I am very confident that I can vow to the entire country that this next generation that you represent of conservatives that are rising up will not let this country down. Ladies and gentlemen, the fight for America is only just beginning, and I honestly feel bad for the enemies of liberty and justice because they have no idea what they just started. And so, let me see by a show of hands, how many of you are in your 20s? Yeah, all right, that's awesome. That's awesome. So I'm sure most of us in here are Gen Z. I'm the first year of it, and we're Gen free. But guys, I want to tell you a very special message. I'm in my 20s. I'm 25 years old. At 24 years old, and because we live in the greatest country in the world, I decided that I wanted to run for Congress because I don't want to raise children in a country that is so divided and that is becoming so corrupt. But my friends, when I look out this crowd, all of you that just raised your hand in your 20s, there is nothing different besides you and me. I just might be able to roll down a hill a little faster. But there's nothing different between you and me. We are all patriots who love this country. And if you are in your 20s, man, I encourage you. And in fact, I will help you. Run for office. Please. We need this on all levels of our government. We need our state legislatures, our city councils. We need you in Congress because let me tell you, it is so hard. And I saw my dear friend Lauren Boebert. She's a freshman in our class as well. But I'm sure she would agree. It is so hard to get to know the names of everyone in Congress because right now they're all wearing masks. They're all about 55 years old. They're all kind of balding. And they all look the exact same. But guys, it's time we stop sending cookie-cutter politicians to Washington. And when I look out and see all of you, I see fighters. So I say, let's send some more fighters to Washington, D.C. Yeah. Because guys, you know, we live in the greatest country in the world, and I know every single one of you know that. And our founding fathers were absolute geniuses. I believe they were inspired by God. And my friends, when they put the Constitution together, when they put our Bill of Rights together, you You know, they went back and they got their values from ancient Jerusalem with Judeo-Christian values. They sought that every person should have one vote. One vote, Democrats, one. They looked to ancient Athens to see where democracy came from, to see that every person should have a voice and have a vote. They looked to ancient Rome to understand that our incredible country, it needs law and order. It needs incredible infrastructure, and that's what we need to bring to our country. But also when they were looking back at these ancient civilizations, specifically Rome and Greece, when they looked into these civilizations, they realized that these civilizations created incredible town squares where orators could come and they could speak freely about big, dangerous topics to talk about. And then a very discerning crowd would sit there and make decisions about what they should do in their country, what was the right political move. And our founding fathers saw that and they said, we shouldn't just have one town square, we should give you a town square everywhere. And we should give everyone freedom of speech. And that's what our First Amendment is. But my friends, all of our rights are currently under threat of being taken away from us. You see that the ATF right now is attacking our right to be able to have pistol braces on our carbines. You can see right now that the woke left is trying to limit us from having free speech. My friends, let me tell you, if we lose the Second or the First Amendment, all of our other rights will erode and be gone. And so I'm telling you right now, I mean, just what I think the left is doing, and this is because they want power, they're telling people, you know what, let's create a society where you are free from being offended. And they're using that to get these people who pull on their heartstrings, who wear their hearts on their sleeves, saying, yeah, I don't want to offend everybody, and you shouldn't want to offend other people too. I mean, if you go around purposely trying to offend somebody, that doesn't make you brave, it just makes you a jerk. But also Ben Shapiro is absolutely right when he says that facts don't care about your feelings. Yeah. And so, when we start thinking of what's going on, and we see, you see PragerU and Morgan Seegers, they're defending capitalism and free speech, and I think it's an incredible job. But just because within a capitalist society there are winners and there are losers, and it makes some people on the left feel bad that there are losers, it doesn't mean that they should be allowed to silence PragerU, Morgan Seegers, or any other patriots. But you see big left, Google, Facebook, all these tech companies, they are trying to limit what we can say on the new town square. Because trust me, we do no longer have a central town square. We have a new town square on social media. And I can see a lot of your faces. I recognize a lot of you. You guys are utilizing that to be able to fight for your freedoms. And my friends, right now is the absolute time for us to rise up and fight, because they are trying to silence us. They are trying to take away our rights, and they want us to go like sheep to the slaughter. But yeah, it's not going to happen. But man, hey, let me just take a look. Yeah, no, I don't see any sheep. I just see a pack of lions. Yeah. This right here is a pride. And my friends, we are going to defend our nation with pride. This new generation of conservatives is going to redefine what it means to be a Republican. We are going to be the party that is known to fight. And right now, they are trying to take away, let me tell you, the #1 policy position of Democrats all across the board in state government and in national government is elections. They are trying to change the law so that they can win elections from now and into the future. And we will not let that happen. So guys, when you go back to your districts, when you go home, please get on the phone, call your congressman. I know it sounds annoying, but honestly, it's very unlikely that they'll answer, because most congressmen don't come out and want to be around the people. They want to have their bodyguards, be in their armored cars. But I've got a lot of my volunteers right here. You guys know that I love getting out and taking pictures with all of you and getting to meet you, shake your hand. So right after this, I will be out in the lobby. I think it's by, I'll be somewhere, and I want to take a picture with every single person here. I'll stay as long as it takes. But that's because that's how we need our new system of government to be. A government where it's run by the people, not just some elite few in Washington, D.C. who they think that they know better. When I was just up in D.C. for orientation, and I call these guys careers. So the people have been there like 20, 30 years, which is ridiculous. Longer than most of us have been alive. Insane. This career, when I was going back home, he put his arm around me. He said, oh, hey, man, so you headed back to hang out with all those rednecks back in your district? And I looked at him and I was like, man, I am one of those rednecks. And so everybody, I'm telling you, I'm encouraging you. Please get on the phone, call your congressman, and feel free to, you can lightly threaten them. And say, you know what, if you don't start supporting election integrity, I'm coming after you, Madison Cawthorn's coming after you, everybody's coming after you. And I'm not saying that these Republicans have to go and just jump straight on the Trump train. I don't want to tell them what they have to do. But I can tell you, I know we're all on the Trump train. But they just need to support election integrity. We need a new system where we don't have 50 little elections going on in every single state. It needs to be nationalized where we can handle it perfectly and make sure that they will not steal another election from us. And so please, call your congressman, encourage them to do that. And then my voter ID, amen. Great call. And so guys, I just want to leave you with one final note. And as I'm sitting here, amen, as I'm sitting here with all of you, you know, I want to tell you about, and I know we've said a lot of funny stuff. We've done the wheelies. It's been fun. But I want to tell you, you know, I think it will most likely hurt my career in a lot of ways because I'm going to push for election integrity and go attack a lot of these Republicans who are soft and weak and don't actually fight. Sold out, amen. And get rid of the cowards. That should be a hashtag. And it's going to hurt my career to do that. There's no doubt about that. But my friends, thank you. Yeah, thanks. But my friends, I'm telling you, nobody remembers the people that chose not to sign the Declaration of Independence. And I'm telling you, I believe that right now we are in an environment that is extremely similar to 1776. You got Governor Cuomo, Governor Gavin Newsom. You've got, and these guys are participating in tyranny, and it's terrible. And so, although it might be the polite thing to do, the politically correct thing to do is to sit on the sidelines and not go out. Hey, Maddie, is not go out and tell everybody what they can, to tell them that they need to vote for election integrity. Remember this. We were not created with a spirit of fear. And just as the Bible says in Esther, and you don't have to be a Christian to understand this. I think this is a tenet that applies to everybody. I believe that all of us in this room were born for such a time as this. Now, you know, I used to go around, and I was homeschooled growing up, and so and so obviously, you know, I could kind of define what I wanted to do in history class. It was great. So I was always like, Mom, tell me battle history. I want to learn warfare. I want to know what the Romans did. What did Alexander the Great do? What happened in World War II? All these cool things as a little boy I'd want to know. And I always asked God, I said, God, you gave me this spirit when I want to go be on a battlefield, where I want to go defend the rights and liberties of everyone around me. But you know what? You look back and we are in the greatest period of peace and prosperity the world has ever known after World War II. And I would always ask God, why did you give me this spirit? Why did you give me this desire to go and fight? And as I look into all of your eyes, I see people who are hungry and who are ready to fight. And my friends, I will tell you, I believe the reason that God put all of us in this same generation is because we were born for such a time as this, and it's time for us to rise up and fight. Yeah. So my friends, remember, you might lose a certain number of friends. Does anybody know who Will Witt is? Yeah. Love that guy, yeah. So I was having dinner with him last night, and he was talking about how people come up to him and say, yeah, you know what, they'll lose friends if they come out as Republicans and conservatives. We're not Republicans, we're conservatives. They come out and you know, they'll lose friends, they'll get canceled, all of these things. Those are not friends you want to have. And let me tell you, if you start getting attacked, if you start getting canceled, man, come hang out with me, because I'll be your friend. Because right now, it is a time to stand up to fight. It is a time to fight for our country. Nobody else is going to do it. Remember, when the establishment tells you in 2022, 2024, when you're running for Congress or whatever positions you're running for, and I am supporting you, when the establishment tells you you need to wait, this is the last thing I'm going to leave you with. You need to wait in line. You need to wait your turn. Literally do this. Raise your arms, look around, and say, who the hell are we in line behind? Because whoever we're in line behind is not doing a good job. And I want to inherit a country I am proud of, not one that is burned to the ground. Yep. So, my friends, let's all go out into the world after SAS. And thank you, Charlie Kirk, for this great event. Let's all go out into the world. And let's aspire to create a country that is so great and that is so welcoming to everyone with open arms, no matter what your religion is. I don't care what your race is. As long as you love freedom and liberty, you are welcome in this party. And go out and let's make it the popular thing to do, that we're not defined as Republicans, we're not defined as Democrats, but my friends, we are defined as Americans.
Ladies and gentlemen, that